Ladies and gentlemen, this is Julien Masson from Adrenaline Combatives, and I have with me Christun Erwin. Did I pronounce that right?
That's correct.
From Healthy Buffalo.
Hello.
How
Thank you
you
for having
doing?
me. How's everything going?
How you doing? How you doing? How's tricks? Give us a little introduction. Who are you?
All right. My name is Christun, as you said, and I run Healthy Buffalo Self-Defense over in the United States. So I'm in Missouri, and they're like right in the middle. So I do a couple different courses, just travel around and teach those, and then just fun stuff on the internet. So just basically whatever reels I can find that I think the audio is hilarious. That's usually about what I'm trying to do.
I've seen your videos. Are you gonna give him? Are you gonna give us one of these? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It is your afternoon. It's not mine though. It's like 9 a.m. right now.
That's how you start all your videos.
Yes.
That's
yeah,
cool.
Usually. Unless cool. I'm stressed and it's like some video where I'm like getting my ass handed to me or something like that. Then probably not.
So which city were you born in, Christun?
So I was born in a small town outside of Kansas City, so about 40 miles east of there.
Okay.
And I live in the middle of nowhere in southwest Missouri, but I'm actually in northwest Arkansas because my buddy here, it's his house, and he has much better internet than I do. So I have no internet. I live like in the woods, like very, very rural. So
it's not a bad thing at all when you think about it. I don't know if you know about it, but all these frequencies, they're not really good for our health. When you got the internet, the Wi-Fi, the phone, all this stuff going through your energy field all day long,
Yeah, I don't think it could be. It's probably not.
So how was it growing up? So obviously we're going to talk about your path into the martial arts, into the self-protection, how you got in there. But let's start with how it was growing up. And did you have to experience violence when you were younger? Have you been? I've been bullied a lot when I was a kid, for example. So that's what led me to do what I do today. But did anything like that happen to you?
No, actually, I was the oldest of 3 boys at the time. And so I had like probably the most like American ideal childhood for the most part. I mean, we moved around a lot, but it wasn't ever like wasn't traumatic or anything. I didn't get into martial arts until probably about a decade ago, maybe.
Okay.
So yeah, it was I mean, I probably had the scrappy mentality. I had the mouth. I just didn't have the ability to back it up. Is probably what my problem was. So yeah, Chihuahua mentality. That's what we're talking about. Really.
Chihuahua mentality. Yeah, we were talking about Nikki the Chihuahua. I think we're probably talking about the same Chihuahua. I have to send you some link. It's that white little Chihuahua, and that guy is just is trying to hug it and kiss it, and it's going.
Yeah, I didn't think it's just like.
Yeah. It's Nikki the Chihuahua. I've been following that Chihuahua for a couple of years now. It makes me laugh. It absolutely made me laugh, mate. So, what you said you started martial arts about a decade ago. What did you start with? Was it? I've seen you done some jiu-jitsu. Is it what you started with?
No, I'm like white belt forever in jiu-jitsu. I will never ever advance, I don't think. I started out in karate, so I got a 2nd degree black belt in karate, and then taught it for a couple of years.
Okay.
And then kind of, I'm 5'7", and we would do a lot of these things, and I remember thinking like, I just don't know if this is gonna work. Like for my size, it was kind of a very like one size fits all thing. Mm-hmm. I had also I was a foster parent. So my ex-husband and I we fostered around 36 kids. And then we adopted 9, but we had a lot of teen girls and a few teen boys that came through. And there was a lot of like boundary and psychological things that I was seeing. And just in my personal life, I'd seen like a lot of understanding like adrenal responses and things like that. And I
Mhm.
just remember being like, man, I just don't know, like under stress, it wasn't ever pressure tested.
Mhm.
And I'm kind of one of those people where I'm like, I'm not like, I want to know that something's going to work. And so what happened is I wanted to test myself. And so I went and looked up a SEER. I thought maybe I could find a civilian SEER course. And
What is a SEER course?
it's it's like evasion. Like basically if you get captured or something, they're going to throw you in a box and like make you
Counter
feel,
custody and escapology and things like
yeah,
this?
and all that.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
super glad that didn't work out because I don't think I would have done well. Maybe, who knows? But what popped up was Craig Douglas's ShivWorks ECQC course.
Mhm.
And so I just showed up there, and I had um, for shooting and stuff like that around here, I had like what, we call like redneck range. And so basically, your dad would load the gun and then hand you the gun, and then you'd shoot it, and then you'd hand it safely back, And that was about the experience. I think I owned like a Taurus 380 at the time. But anyway, yeah, showed up to that course, and he does these things called evolutions.
Yeah.
And you get to basically, he puts you with some strange guy you don't know, and you get to test out all of it, like how to, how you speak, how you keep people at a distance and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And it was very eye-opening. And that was also like, hey, you need jujitsu. So that was a good time. So definitely ate some crow there. So, and then ended up at in my MMA gym, and that's where I'm at now. So I do, yeah, the Muay Thai and sometimes jiu-jitsu. It's not my favorite. I know it's necessary, so don't
Yeah.
hate me, but I,
So, what style of karate were you teaching? Was it Wado Ryu, Shotokan, Kyokushin? Did
no
you
idea.
no
No
idea?
idea.
Was
It
it
was
something?
probably some garage karate. I really need to be careful on what I say.
Okay, okay. Yeah, no. I mean, because karate was one of my first martial arts as well when I was like 6 or 7, and I remember having done like a style that was. It was boring for me. Like the first style of karate that I did was so boring for me. It was just like horse dances and katas and things like that. And it was like I just wanted to go for it. You know what I mean? So eventually I found like a Kyokushinkai karate class, which was like proper like sparring, like sparring all the time and kicking and punching, and I like that. That's what really built my basis in terms of punches and kicks. Do you know what I mean?
Right. I
That's why I
think
was.
they did sparring, but it was
Mhm.
like you weren't like, you didn't have to do that to advance. And it was kind of like, and it was like, if you're wanting to learn it from and also like, it was just like, okay, great. You're learning all of these moves over here that are like intricate as hell. And then
Hmm.
you watch people spar and you're like, you're not doing any of that shit. Like, so what is and that was one of the things that I talk about, like in my courses and stuff like that, is like, it's all about reducing variables for failure. Okay. And it's just like, when you're under stress, it is like, I always tell this story. So when I was in this ECQC, there was so there's like a lot of people that had extensive military backgrounds. So
Yeah.
so I always joke about this because there was these two guys in this first one, and and this was like kind of my first introduction into like watching that. And so there's one guy, he was an Army Ranger, and he was actually at that course, I believe, to take it back and teach that material back
Okay.
at, I believe, Fort Benning. This guy was like 6'4", like looked like freaking the epitome of a live action GI Joe doll. I mean, he was a very beautiful man, and we're still friends to this day. So he's awesome. But
More beautiful
so
than me.
he had he had a jujitsu background. I think at the time he was like either I think he was a brown belt at the time. And so anyway, he was there, and then he got paired with a lot because of his like, experience with this guy who was like the St. Louis Police Officer of the Year. and during like Ferguson and all that fun stuff. And so this guy looked like, you know, Captain America. And I believe he was like a brown belt, maybe a little bit like, I'm not 100% sure, in jiu-jitsu as well. They both did MMA. Okay. Both of them did MMA and had a few fights underneath them and stuff like that. Well, when they did their evolutions, I remember I videoed it too, because I was like, you know, this is kind of pretty to watch, you know, whatever. But like, their shit was like maybe a little bit technical, but it was ugly. It was just a very ugly, violent thing. And I remember being like, here's these two guys with this background. They have all this experience and they're not remembering like 15-point moves of like, you know, and so that's what I stress a lot is like how, you know, you're not going to remember all of these things, like how to, you know, a 4-point move on how to get out of a hair grab when you're under stress. Trying to control, you know, even not even knowing you need to control your heart rate, trying to, you know, you're going to gas and so, yeah, I wanted to be different. I wanted to be effective basically in terms of, I had a lot of people tell me, you know, well, you can't teach a women's self-defense course. You're not going to teach anybody anything in a few hours. And I was like, and I remember Ryan Hoover with Fit to Fight. He's with Krav Maga. He was the one that told me, he was like, do what?
I like Ryan. He's a good lad.
Oh, he's awesome. But I remember him, you know, we had this discussion and he was very much just talking about, he was like, you can still make them walk away safer. And it's like, so that's what it is. So I'm like, want to reduce how much information can I give them that's actually usable, that they will remember, that is going to be effective, even though I know that probably only one of them at the most is going to go on and do something with more self-defense, you know? So at the end of each course, I tell them my goal is not for them to go and join a martial arts, like at all. My goal is for them to just take the next step. So if anybody just goes, I don't care if they go out and buy a knife or if they watch a few videos, just one more step, then I'll have felt like I've succeeded. So anyway, bridging the gap.
Well, you know what I mean. You've mentioned a few names of people like that I really have a lot of respect for. Craig Douglas being one of the top guys. I've been watching him for years now. He's been really influencing me to train inside cars and in confined space and you know, with weapons and stuff. So yeah, definitely. And if I go to the US at some point, it's definitely on my list of the people that I want to meet and train with. So yeah, if you had the chance to train with these guys, this is brilliant. You got some really good people, not you know, in your country, which is great. So now, do you know what you spoke about? That's interesting because you describe how you went from traditional to a more combative approach. Yeah. And I think that most people that deal in the world of self-protection or combatives have had that transition. And then some of us are lucky to, I mean, for example, my father was in the French Special Forces and he was an instructor as well. So from a young age, I delved into combatives and police tactics and all that stuff. But I still had a transition just like you from the traditional to the, oh, wait a second, could I really make this shit work when I'm adrenalized, tunnel vision, when all that? And so it makes you think. And it makes you rethink everything that you do and then how you train and how you see it, how you visualize things. Because, you know, we're all brought up, growing up watching movies, action movies. I used to be a big fan of Kung Fu movies when I was a kid.
Right.
I used to love it. You know what I mean? And I mean, anyone will tell you that knows me. You know, I was the first one to do like jumping, spinning kicks inside the shopping mall when my mom was shopping for the. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you were that kid. I gotta fix it.
Oh yeah. and then it was like now after training with certain people, you know, people like Lee Morrison, for example, who's got to be one of the most realistic instructors out there. It's like I'm looking at Kung Fu movies now, and it doesn't look as sexy as it used to. It doesn't look as appealing as it used to because I'm like, it doesn't look realistic. So before you actually believe, you know, we're brought up to believe that that's the way people fight, you know?
Right. I think that was like a huge eye-opening thing is like the understanding of like, you like I remember getting my black belt in karate and I was like, I don't feel like a badass. And then like doing a lot of training. I think I have like, man, I think at this point I've got like 400 hours in just like combatives courses with like pistols and knives, right?
That's great.
And like I'm an instructor in knife control concepts with under Aaron Giannetti, and then like, you know, all of this stuff. And it's just like, I'm like, when am I going to feel like a badass? Like, when am I going to feel like John Wick? And it's like, you're not.
You won't.
That sucks.
Oh.
It's like, oh, it's never going to look cool. That's the other part too. It's just like all these people that are flashy. And I think that's why I started just posting like some of my, like, I wanted people to see the reality of it. Is a lot of times like it is not like, well, a lot of the times, most of the time, it's not fancy at all. It's pretty ugly. I think that way about like also with knives, like how I have a knife course too, and it's the whole point is like, again, it's back to reducing variables for failure, right? And you get all these people, and I mean, don't get me wrong, like Kali or, you know, Filipino martial arts and things like this. Okay, great. That's all fun. And there is basic stuff, but at the end of the day, it is just like fighting. If you don't have these basics down, then you're not going to be effective. And here's the deal with the knife. If you cannot draw your knife, you're not going to be able to use it. And so it's like, why we spend all this time with people learning all these fancy things. And it's like, okay, but at the end of the day, if you start actually watching video footages of people that are effective with the knife in self-defense, it's not pretty. It's them getting it out. And it's also like, okay, psychologically, do you have the understanding of what that means?
Absolutely.
To stick the pointy end into another person. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that. And so it's like, that's where I started to go, okay, we got to go much farther back, you know, like, so anyway, it's very interesting to me because it's like, oh, I've got a knife. Okay, cool. Where is it? Well, you know, my little, you know, some people are really effective with a Kershaw blade, but yeah, it's my little pocket knife. And it's like, oh, something else that was very interesting that I've been thinking of too is like, what knives, you know, like a box blade or something like that. I've had people where I'm like, okay, well, what if that's what you have, you know, and can you train with that? Like make that effective a lot. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So I don't know where I was going with that.
Tell you what, just to bring a little, you just spoke about certain things, and I just took some notes to give us some sort of structure for what we're going to talk about. I would definitely going to speak about the knife. That's one of my specialty. I love that stuff as well. And what you said, for example, is access. So, and like you said, you go to Filipino martial arts and, you know, the knife stuff, and everyone is teaching you all the angles and the slashes and the puncture and all that, which is great. Don't get me wrong. It's all part of learning how to move with a blade. But it's only in the combatives, in the realistic form, that they teach you, wait a second, do you walk with a blade in your hand? No, you don't. So are you actually able to access your blade and you know, are you able to access your blade under stress, under pressure? So it's like, now, you know, either you work on simple access, which is just you in front of the mirror, just lifting your shirt and grabbing your blade out and maybe throw a shot with it. That's a simple access. And then let's do that under pressure. So you'll do some burpees, you'll do some push-ups, you'll get yourself tired. You might spin yourself like, you know, really fast, like 7 times, and then try to access your blade when you're like, whoa. So, you know, that kind of changes the dynamic. And then there is in-fight weapon access, where now you're already grappling with a person. And so now you got to find that time. You got to find that an opportunity to kind of immobilize both his hands and having one hand free, like an arm drag or something. So now you can access your weapon and use it. And all this stuff is stuff that's not being taught in the traditional martial arts. I mean, people like Craig Douglas do a great job teaching stuff like that. But it's like the knife access is the most important skill. All the rest is if you can take that piece of metal and just put it in the other person, knowing what you're targeting. You're targeting the arteries, the arterial system, and the main organs. If you know how to do that, it doesn't need to be flashy or anything. It's just put the blade in him as many times as you can in as less time as possible.
They
And
spend
that
all
is it.
these time like, and I mean, I don't think like having like areas to aim is wrong, but they're like, yeah, but if you stab them directly in this like seventh vertebrae or what, I don't even know what they're saying, and I'm like, you're not gonna remember that shit. Like, I know a ton of badasses, and I don't think they can do that. Like, maybe, but it's like that's because they've like been in altercations like that. You're not gonna be this like, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I'm another person on. Accessing that I really like is Scott Babb with Libre Knife Fighting.
Yeah, Libre.
Love that guy. So I do a lot of his stuff, do his little program. So I like his, the access part of it also. Hey.
Yeah. I've been looking at Scott's stuff for several years now, and I've been incorporating it into my my toolbox already. I like his stuff. He's got some really cool stuff, and what I like about Scott Babb and the way that he moves with the knife is that he's more puncture. He's more working on punctures rather than slashes, and he understands that punctures are more life-threatening and they're more efficient depending on the length of the blade. And slashes also, there's another thing, is that the clothing can slow a slash down. What we used to do with my father when I was younger, we used to buy a big piece of meat, like a cow leg or something like that, and we used to hang it, and we used to put like various type of clothing around it, like jeans and leather, and obviously all the stuff that we didn't need anymore. But we put it around, and we took some slashes and some punctures in there and see what sort of damage it was causing. And you realize that if you got a t-shirt plus a jumper plus a leather jacket on the top, that will offer you some degree of protection. So the slashes are not going to be that efficient, and the blade might get stuck in the clothing as well. But punctures, they go in. They pretty much go in all the time.
Yeah, that's one of the things I like about Scott Babb too. Is like, so Adam Boyce with Spartan Mode. He's I think he's in Idaho. Really neat guy. He does some cool stuff. And but he was the one that gave me the idea for what I do. Like, you put dowels in this little pork butt, and then you wrap it, and it's like 32, 33 times with saran wrap. And so that's like the, basically skin simulation, stuff like that. You put clothes on it and stuff. But one of the reasons, it's so funny, because I always try, and it's like what you said with puncture wounds, like I have two knives that I like promote mostly. And the first one is like the Fox Karambit. It's usually the one that I wear. And then the other one is the Shiv Works El Nino. And that is the puncture one, because of how easy it is to get, and stick in where you want. But I mean, even it's like, one of the things, I talk about, it's just like, I remember you talk about people that like used to bounce and stuff like this. And if there was like a huge bar brawl fight, and then at the end of it, everybody would lift their shirts up because nobody felt like they got stabbed, because nobody sees it. And that's the other part, dude. You start looking at it, it's like knife defense. And it's like, you start watching these videos, it's like nobody saw the knife. Like, all you see is a guy bleeding out right there, and he didn't even know. And so, but I talk about like face. So that's one of the things I love with Scott Babb, is he talks about, he does a lot of the flicks to the face, it's the slicing in that way.
Yeah,
and it's psychological, because it's just like, okay, great, I could stab you a few times here, but for me as a smaller person, you're waiting for somebody to kind of like bleed out. That one's not going to be as effective as if they, see their cheek hanging off of them and they're like, oh shit, So yeah. I like, oh, I don't know where I was going with all that, but yeah. But the Karambit, that was the one that I remember when I would do that, like through the shirt, it would still get a good,
Yeah, because of the shape of it. I'm not a big fan of Karambit, but I still train with them just kind of to know. But my favorite type of blades are these ones.
Oh yeah, those are fun.
Spydercos, Spydercos are definitely.
Are we doing these?
She comes prepared. What about this one? Do you know Bastinelli?
Yes, Is that the fighting scalpel? Yes, I love. So that one.
The pickle.
Okay, so here's the thing about that knife. I did a thing on. Yeah, I have one of those. I really like that knife. It lays so flat though. So when you're talking about like variables for failure, I had a real problem like when I was accessing, I couldn't get my finger because it was so flat. And so, but for a boot, one year, it was for Halloween, I had this like giant like skeleton onesie on. And I was like, where the hell am I going to put a knife in here? And yeah, that Bastinelli knife was freaking perfect for like right in my boot. And he couldn't see it very well. And it was like, yeah.
I like his knives as well. He's an artist, isn't he? Like Bastinelli. He's a proper. He's got a vision in his head, and you know, it's like he's doing some really really nice blades. I like his work. It's a bit pricey for me, but you know, he's doing well.
So there's a dupe on Amazon that's pretty identical to it. That's like $15.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Shh.
Hey, they are promoting me. It's fine. I don't know.
So that's one thing that I've seen, that you were doing the blade. And you know what? Obviously, you know, here in the UK, our laws are completely different than yours, which is they took our right to arm ourselves a long time ago, which is shit. I mean, you know, if you ask me, if it was up to me, I'd be packing two guns with me everywhere I go. Do you know what I mean? I grew up with firearms at home. My father was in the special forces. I've been on the shooting range as well from a young age. So it was part of my education that a gun is not a weapon, it's just a tool, it's an instrument.
Right.
Exactly. The real weapon is the intention to cause deadly harm. And if you don't have that, then you're never going to hurt anyone, you know, especially
right.
if you got trigger, how do you call that? Trigger discipline and things like that. There's no risk. No one is going to get hurt as long as you respect these 4-101, you know, rules, right. And you got some moral compass. But the thing is, yes, in the UK, the problem is that, you know, we can't carry all that stuff. But having said that, I still, when women come to see me and I have to teach women, the training that I provide to women is adapted. I don't teach women the same way that I teach men. And it's obviously not, it's not a sexist thing, but it's just, let's just say it how it is. Most women are physically smaller and you know, weaker than men, especially the men that are going to go and attack them very often are physically stronger, bigger, faster. So one of the main thing that I teach them, on the top, obviously the soft skills, we will speak about the soft skills. It's massive. It's something that you should start by this. In fact, if you only had 1 or 2 hours with someone, that's what you should start with. But you know, in terms of the skill set, the physical skill set, I always said to women, learn how to use a blade, learn how to use a weapon, because that will get, if the male is here and you're here, and that'll bring you somewhere here. You know what I mean?
I will tell you, even you know, we are, you know, we have the Second Amendment here, so we can carry. And I have a lot of girlfriends that are very, very like pro, you know, carrying stuff like that. I have found like women that are first starting out in self-defense, they are more willing to learn about a knife than they are a gun, and they have the opportunity, you know what I mean? So that's kind of why number one, I just like knives, but that's why I veered that direction, is because I'm like, okay, I would get these women and they're like, well, a lot of realtors, and they'd be like, well, I have a knife. And I'm like, what is it first? And they'll be like, you know, it's a Swiss Army knife or something. And I'm like, okay, where is it? And they'll be like, oh, it's in my purse. And I'm like, well, that's not a weapon at this point, you know? And so it's like, okay, why do I, you know, certain knives, why do I recommend them? Again, back to reducing, you know, variables for failure. Okay, so what's going to be the easiest knife for a woman to draw and stick into a person? It's the Shivworks El Nino right now. That's the one I can just tell you, right? But then also it has to account for clothes. I mean, I'm not, sounds dumb, but it's like men wear typically a little bit more bulkier things and stuff like that. We're not. And that's just the way it is. And it's like, okay, so what ones can we wear? What can we do? What can we conceal? What can we, you know, wear? What if you can't legally, carry something. So then you're looking at, like I said earlier, like a box cutter or something like that, So yeah, it is a very interesting, like I love, yeah. So
Yeah, Blade is definitely one of my favorite thing as well. And it's an extension of yourself. Once you
right.
know the basic angles, movements, and things like that, then it becomes, that's it. That's just an extension of your body. When you can
Well,
start.
and how it all like flows in together too, like with
Mm,
boxing and even with jujitsu and stuff like this and framework. Once you get in, and I think that's what is neat about combatives is it pulls all that stuff together,
mm.
throws away the fluff.
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah,
you've
yeah.
learned a bunch. It's like what we are talking about, katas and shit. You spend all your time memorizing fancy moves and katas, and sure, it taught you as if you were a kid. Yeah, it's going to teach you a little bit about sitting still and mild discipline or something like that. But
Mm.
I was a 30-year-old woman. Like, I don't need to know that shit. I've
Yeah.
already done that. I want to know how to defend myself. And so, but that's what I like about, the knives and everything. It all starts to come back together on the baser part of it all. And it ties from grappling to, boxing to when you have a knife in your hand and things like that. And yeah, I think it's interesting too. You said earlier you talk about soft skills with women, and you said teaching them and completely different, and that's 100% fact too. Because also our mentality is different. There was I remember reading this article. It was this woman that was talking about it was some gender studies class, and she was discussing about how she had men in the class, and she had them go right up on the board, and she was like, men, what do you do to prevent yourself from being raped when you walk across the parking lot to your car? And they were like, because it didn't really, they hadn't, and when they asked the women, they had like a laundry list. They were up there just writing down, this is what I do, the keys, blah, 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 everything that they had been taught from a very young age, whether it's realistic or not, they'd always been told that.
Mm.
And so it's like, that's the mentality too. It's just like, you have a lot of, um, like, do I look like prey? That's a big one. With men, they can kind of, get a little bit different from it in terms of that. Um, and also what they're looking for is different. There's very, death, but then there's other things too. So,
Mm.
yeah.
You're right. So, I think it's all about mindset. And, mindset is really like the foundation of everything in combatives. And sometimes, I mean, you've seen people with very little skills just fighting on mindset alone and being
Yes.
successful.
Yes.
So that's one thing, the mental resilience and the kind of asking yourself those four questions that I always ask to people is like, what do you live for? And
Right.
what you're ready to fight for, and what are you ready to die for, and what are you ready to kill for, you know
Right. It's
Mm.
funny you said that because so in our gym, my coach, Aaron, so we have a lot of kids like troubled teen. I think it's pretty typical of most boxing gyms.
Mm.
But what's interesting is like he has a 5 o'clock beginners class, and these are kids that are like on the cusp of maybe going into juvenile, whatever. And so they'll come in. This is kind of like last ditch effort to get them to. So they're like required to be here. And one of the things that I love is you'll get these kids in. I had one, and I mean, obviously, I have a foster care background, so I'm like, I want to help, and so I'll go and like I was paired up with this one kid. He was 14, and it's interesting because they think what they're looking for when you first start out, you think that people are looking for power, and it's
Mm.
like, no. So they always start out, they want to, especially, if they've got a female partner or something like that, and they're just, going to town or something like this. But in the end, you see them very quickly gas out and they're just done. And you're like, hey, we've only gone 10 minutes, buddy. You've got another, 50. But what's interesting is like telling these kids and you explain, it's just like, hey, he's not looking for your powerful punch. He's going to fix that later. What he's looking for is if you quit. And so you'll be like, oh, they'll be like, oh my gosh, I need water. I'm like, don't quit. You can go slower, but
Mm.
don't quit. Don't
Yeah,
stop. Don't
yeah.
sit there. Don't quit. And that's the whole point. It's just like, you talk, that's one of the things I teach with, women is just like, how do you overcome adrenal responses is, one of them is, when you're telling yourself, I can't do this anymore. I can't, I can. So you're mentally just,
Yeah.
and then, yeah, I don't know, I was going somewhere, but we have like, you have several different like adrenal, how do you combat this? And that's one of them is, yeah.
Kind of like rewiring yourself, the way that you're thinking
Right.
via some sort of I like to use self hypnosis a lot, or NLP, things that, like kind of how I communicate to myself. So, it's like having the analogy of having the little devil on your shoulder, and then you got your lower self and your higher self, and your lower self is always telling you, you're done, just quit, you're tired, just sit down.
Right.
Or, it's the voice of procrastination, the voice of laziness, the voice of all that negativity, and then it's kind of, it's like consciously bring that voice out, the other voice that says, now you know what, fuck this, I'm not gonna stop, I'm not gonna do this,
Right.
or I'm gonna clean my room right now, I'm not gonna wait, or it's like I'm gonna do things now. And even though it's difficult, once I'm done with it, even though I will spit half of my lungs over there, yeah, once I'm
Right.
done, I'll be proud that I actually went through it. I'll be, I'll have this accomplishment. I'll be
Right.
proud of that accomplishment. So that's why I think, yeah, mindset is something massive, and people need to work on that. Kind
Right.
of, I like to think about my why, why I'm doing what I'm doing, and that's really should be the driving force behind everything. It's like, why do I train? Or if I fight and I have to fight for my life, why do I do that? It's the same four questions that I asked earlier. You have to find what you're here for. What's your purpose? Who are you here for? Maybe it's for somebody else. Very often for women it's their kids.
Yep.
It could be your children, could be your dog, your goldfish. Could be anything. Do you know what I mean? Anything that holds you here on this planet, when you feel
When
like you're
it,
supposed to.
yeah, you
Yeah.
said it's like, and that's the other part too. We were talking about like soft skills earlier. You go back to explaining to women, like, a lot of times we've been raised to be polite with
Mm,
strangers and things like this. And it's like, well, hold up a second, especially in the South, in the United States, like we're all just very, just sweet, bless your heart. And
mm.
like when you go into like my brain just shut off. Like I had a point and it's just,
Oh, did it just happen to you? I hate
it
when it
just,
happens to me.
gosh, dang it. I'm sure it was great. Well, with
Well, I think
that,
you were saying. I think you were saying about the fact that I mean, maybe I know where you were going with that, but so is it that you're just being taught? Women very often are being taught to be polite, and even when they feel, when their instinct are telling them, "Oh, there's something not
priorities.
right there," they kind of decide to just overlook this and not trust their instinct, and because they're
Right.
just going to be polite. Is
Right.
that
So
what
getting
you?
them to understand. And so it's like it's priorities is
Mm,
how do I, with the women in terms of like putting their kids in there, like, okay, great. That's what's going to actually ignite that, fire. And it's like, so when the class starts, you have to, it's like prior planning prevents piss poor performance. It's like prior decision making is going to help you make in fight decisions better. Right.
mhm,
So if I get people to understand, okay, what is your priority? Well, my priority is to go home to my family. That's
mhm,
it. So then that's the goal. So whatever it takes to get to that goal, then that's where we're at. And so it's like it's basically breaking down all the stages of the fight from all the way back to the beginning, and then you
mhm,
work to the soft skills. And we were just talking about, basically all that stuff was like adrenaline stuff in fight, and
mhm.
combating that. But it's like it goes so much farther back. I think my tagline for Healthy Buffalo is know when the fight starts. It's one of the things that makes Craig Douglas just an absolute genius at what he does, is because he goes back and he's just like, hey, I think you and we've talked a little bit about like Jeff Thompson and stuff like that. And I loved how he talks about, what are these predators looking for? Okay.
Yeah.
So we can start here. Okay. He talks about just keeping people at a distance. He has his fence and things like this. With Craig Douglas, he's like very big on keeping people back for, several more feet. Hey, and being polite. There's no need to it, but nobody needs to be in your space. Well, then you tie all this into what I saw in like foster care, where it's just, especially teen girls, creating boundaries in their life. Okay. So like one of the videos that I've done that is probably one of the more popular ones that I think really resonated with a lot of parents is I had a lot of men that would ask me, and women too, but they're like, what martial art can I put my kid in? Or what can I do to have my child be safer? And I'm like, well, the first two things that you can do is, one, you can teach them the phrase, stop, you're making me uncomfortable. And the second one is to teach your kids to have doors that are open. And because you're looking at the predators that we're looking at aren't going to be the ones that are attacking them on the streets. The predators are going to be the ones that are slowly sliming their way in. And so if you want your kid to be safer, okay, and you're looking at statistics of 1 in 7, of girls, I think 1 in 3 for girls and 1 in 7 for boys before the age of 18 are being sexually assaulted. When you start looking at those stats, it's like, no, I need to teach my kid about grooming. And I need to teach my kid, and so it's like, hey, let's start here. And we're not talking bullying things, but like, I'm going to draw the boundary thing goes so much farther and it extends later on, even with fighting, it's just like, okay, well, I'm drawing a boundary here in my life. You cross that. I'm going to basically at this point consider you a person with ill intent. And it's the same with fighting. If I've said, hey, can you hold up a second? And they keep walking towards me, I'm automatically going, okay, that person is not listening to what I'm saying.
Not respecting your boundaries,
Right. And so therefore that person, and that's the whole point, is are we determining whether or not this person has good intent or bad intent? So
Are you familiar with the work of Richard Dimitri? No? Right.
I need to be taking notes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna send you the knife dupe and you send me that.
Sure. You'll love Richard Dimitri's work. Like you'll be I promise you'll absolutely love the work of Richard Dimitri and Pamela Hermitage is his wife. They're basically, what they're doing is violence prevention. So they're talking about what you just spoke about, but in much like greater detail. And they're speaking about awareness. Basically, they're talking about behavioral awareness and the ability to spot behavioral red flags. Understanding
right.
Understanding the different criminal motivations.
Yes.
Understanding the different criminal archetypes, the different types of violence, so social violence or antisocial violence, and the different types of personality disorder. So like the extreme narcissistic personality disorder, the sociopathic personality disorder, the psychopathic personality disorder, and all that stuff. But they really go very much in depth into all that stuff. I'm sure that's something you'll find fascinating. I'll put you in touch with Rich. I'll get along really well with him. By the way, I'll be interviewing him soon, next month.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. That's definitely one you don't want to miss. And he's like us. He's ADHD as well. So he's one of us. So yeah, no, you're right. All that stuff is very important, and I think that you just spoke about it. It's awareness, And I always said to people, if I only had 1 hour with someone, and I knew that I was never gonna see them again,
right?
Instead of teaching them how to punch, how to elbow, how to gouge, how to bite, how to do all that shit, I'll teach them about awareness. I'll teach them about how to develop observational skills, how to be environmentally aware, situationally aware, and behaviorally aware of what's happening around people, because these 3 things will allow you to see things before they happen. And so, as you know, a lot of people, you got to go and see them, they claim to teach self-defense. They only teach you the in-fight confrontation aspect of things. But it's like Lee Morrison says, it's not Star Trek. People don't fucking materialize out of thin air. There is a beginning, there is a middle, and there is an end. And so the beginning is all the precursor sign before an attack or a threat
Right.
takes place. And so if you got good situational awareness and environmental awareness and behavioral awareness, you can actually spot pre-threat indicators, spot these signs precursor to an attack, and go, right, I don't like this. Right, kids, get back in the car. We're not stopping here. We're going somewhere else.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and this, in my sense, is the best form of self-protection. See things first and don't be there. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Well, that's even like with Jeff Thompson. He talked about Christopher Berry D, when he interviewed all of those serial rapists and serial killers, and he was talking about how, I think the percentage was like 82% of those men said that if a woman had rough speech, that they just deselected her. And I was like, first of all, that's a very high percentage of just what you can do that has nothing to do with physical.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, and then when you start looking at like, we were going to just, at one point talk about freeze responses and stuff like this. You start looking for women and freeze responses with like tonic immobility and things like this. You're looking, that's like 72%. It's insane.
Yeah.
And so it's like, when you start tossing around these, what I find really interesting that I love that Craig does for the civilian side of things over here is like, so in the United States, and I mean, I think a lot of people, I think it's probably pretty universal. It's like, the people on the armchair warriors where they're just like, I would just shoot him, right? I just carry my gun and I just shoot him. Yeah. I love how Craig very quickly nixes that concept in his courses. And he doesn't do it by like telling them, he shows them, hey, guess what? It's nothing for a career criminal to get up into your space. And then pretty soon it's like in-fight weapons access. You aren't going to be able to draw your gun because you're, one, I love the fact that they talk about, are you in shape enough? Like, I'll talk with women and I'm like, are you physically capable of picking up your 30-pound toddler and running with them in the event of like an active shooter or a disaster? It doesn't have to be a shooting situation. It could be like, are you running out with a fire, or something like this? Are you capable? And so that's a big one. But I love how, Craig Douglas points that out. And he very quickly, I'll tell you a funny story. I was in a course, it was called I think it was survival shooting. And so you were in, scenario work, right? So you don't know what you're getting into. I think I had a sim. It was a sim gun. Yeah, it was a sim gun. But so I walked in and I was told, hey, you're going into a convenience store. Okay. And you need to buy a bag of chips. And that's it. So you pretty much, you're trying not to scene it completely. And you're like, okay, obviously this place is getting robbed. Okay. And so I have my conceal, whatever. And I go in, I grab my bag of chips. The clerk's up here. I get in line. And pretty soon a woman comes in line behind me. And I'm like, I turn around, I smile at her. She smiles back. Boom. No big deal. This guy comes in, starts to, whatever, he's robbing the convenience store. And so I'm like, oh, okay, well, we'll let him rob it. It's not a big deal. It wasn't, that's fine. Take the money and go. I don't really care. But it wasn't until he was like looking to like, hey, he act like he was going to shoot the clerk or something like that. So I'm like, okay, I'll wait till he is, whatever. So then I'm sitting here thinking, oh, I'm getting ready to rock this. So like he's distracted. Boom, blah, 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 shoot the bad guy. And I'm like, heck yeah, I hope they got that on video because I just own that. Blah, blah, blah. I got shot in the back. And I was like, and I turned around and it was who was it? It was the gal behind me in line. And so then I'm like, bullshit. So then I'm all like, I don't really, whoa. So I started researching female accomplices. Okay. Do you know the percentage is like, it's like 26%. So you pretty much almost always have like a third party. Okay. But then you're starting to look at the third party where they're using a female accomplice just to get up into your space. So then you start looking at like trafficking and stuff like this. We had a huge situation that happened in Dallas where a 15-year-old girl was abducted from a stadium, a very big, large stadium. She was abducted from a bathroom. Okay. Sure. This woman came in. How easy would it be for her to walk in and just basically you have this like unruly teenager who's crying, but she's actually threatening this girl, come with us. This girl was trafficked from Dallas all the way to Oklahoma City, found 7 days later. Okay. When they found this girl, 3 out of the 5 people they arrested were women.
Yeah, that's ugly. Have you? I've not seen it yet, but there's that movie that's been circulating, that's been coming out, is the Sound of Freedom. Mel Gibson. I've not seen it yet, but I really want to see it, and it's talking about that. It's talking about
Right.
trafficking. Have you seen it?
I have not seen it. So I was a foster parent for 10 years, and so we saw a lot of yeah, it's something that we were, yeah.
It's yeah, it's ugly. It's very, very, very ugly what's happening in the world. And knowing that these are the people in power, these are some of the most powerful people on earth that are into that sort of atrocity. I mean,
Yep.
yeah, like some people deserve to be taken off the planet. Like, I mean, I'm all about forgiving people, sis, but like
Not with
some
that.
you don't you don't
Not
you
with
don't
that.
you don't touch children. And yeah, yeah. Have you, by any chance, are you familiar with the work of Melissa Salt?
Of what?
Melissa Salt. Melissa
Uh-uh.
Salt? No?
No.
I got some things to send you. So Melissa Salt, I'll be interviewing her as well soon. Uh, she's getting a bit older now, but Melissa Salt is, to my eyes, she's the pioneer of female combatives in the U.S. Probably the most explosive women I ever seen, like in her demos and stuff. She was teaching groups of women we're talking back in the 80s, from through the 80s to the 90s. And I definitely, you probably have heard about her under the name of Dr. Ruthless.
No.
Oh, I need to send you some. I will send you some links. You can have a look.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely. Yeah, no, that's good stuff. She's one of the most knowledgeable women I know when it comes to like women self-protection and combatives. I'll be interviewing her probably end of September. So
Very
it'll
cool.
be a good one as well to listen to. So, one thing you were speaking about earlier on was body language, you know, and that's one thing when we speak about mindset. I like Tony Robbins. You know Tony Robbins, the motivational speaker.
I don't
He's
know.
like that big dude that does motivational talk for celebrities in the US. Tony Robbins. If
Oh, Tony Robbins. Yeah, yeah, I
Tony
think
Robbins,
vaguely. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Okay.
So he said something. I mean, he said many things that have really helped me. But one of his old DVD, he was saying, if you're not feeling well, so if you're feeling anxious and you got anxious thoughts, it's going to be reflected in your body language, because your body language is your physiology, and your physiology will reflect your inner mental and emotional state at the moment. And so he said, by changing your body language, you could actually shift your mindset and
Right.
reframe your perspective just by shifting your body language. And so that's why one of the very important thing when we teach self-protection is to teach people to not only read body language. That's one thing. Of course, it's very important to learn to read body language, but it's also very important to apply body language, learn to apply body language. So, for example, I don't know I've been working the doors for quite a long time. I've been doing close protection as well. But you see, on the doors, for example, sometimes I get people that are trying to chew my ear, drunk people. I can't hear what they're saying. The music is louder, and I'm not interested. So my body language will show that. Like, I'm not interested, dude. I'm just
Right.
gonna make a few steps to the side away from that person because I'm not interested. Plus, I can't hear what he's saying. Looking like this. Do you know what I mean? So that's one thing. Now, if I have a woman that's been spiked, and this happens unfortunately, and I see her, she's completely disoriented. She's looking for some point of anchor, someone she can trust. Then my body language will change. I will adapt my body language to make her understand that, oh, I'm here. You can trust me. I'm here to help you. Do you know what I mean? So
Right. Yeah.
that's how you kind of learn to apply your body language depending on situations. But when it comes to, let's say, you're walking in a neighborhood that's not yours, okay, you're going to a friend or something, like Melissa Salt says, you got to walk like you're owning that turf. You know,
Yes.
you gotta own, like, that's your neighborhood. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's your
Right.
home, and you walk with purpose. You walk confidently. You don't look lost or anything, because that would be a criteria of selection by
Right.
by a would-be predator. So we always speak about the predatory optic, the optic through which the predator views his or her victims, which is, if the target appears to be alone, switched off and oblivious to its surroundings. So, nose in your phone, just, with big headphones, and just not seeing what's happening around you, for
Oblivious.
example. Or oblivious, yeah. Or also any sign of mental and emotional weakness, any sign that you're
Yes.
somehow impaired, will be selected, will be viewed upon as some sort of weakness, that
Right.
you're more likely to be selected.
One of the first drills that I do, that I teach, is called Sorry, I Can't Help You. And it's about, like, basically dealing with panhandlers and just people on the streets, that it's just like, I'm not going to mess with you. And it's a twofold thing. It's one, to get women very comfortable with, they don't have to help everybody, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Which goes back to, what is priority number one? If there is a variable that this person could attack me, then I need to remove that variable, which means that I don't need to be messing around with this, because my goal, my priority, is to get home safely to my kids.
Mm-hmm.
So Sorry, I Can't Help You is a big one, because a lot of times people don't realize how hard it is to just verbalize things in the first place, especially if you've been geared to be polite. The other part is that you're also teaching women to meet eyes, because you have a lot of women where they're just like, they make eye contact and they're just like this. And it's like, wait a second, that's going to appear weak to a predator. Not saying that
That's
we're going
interesting. Yeah.
to, we're not engaging with eye contact, but the eye contact is, sorry, I can't help you, and then looking away. So we practice, instead of looking down, we practice going horizontal. And it's more or less like to let them know how we carry ourselves. I saw you. I know you're over there. I'm still scanning the area. I can't help you. I'm being assertive. I'm moving on with my life. I've already forgot about you.
Yeah.
And so that's the very first one. It's funny that you said that about, like, before you were talking about the Tony Robbins guy.
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson talks about,
I love Jordan Peterson.
I do too. He talks about how just straightening up your spine releases certain chemicals in your brain that causes you to feel more confident. And when you feel more confident people make better decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you start with just that, okay, how are you walking across the parking lot, or are you walking across, sorry, I can't help you. Which one's going to appear to a predator?
Yep.
And at the end of the day, it boils down to nature. I use this video example of this, like, leopard that's stalking this deer. This is this little tiny ass fawn sitting in front of a tree. And the leopard, like, this fawn is like, a quarter of the size of this leopard. And the leopard still sneaks around and rips out the throat all secret like, and then, dead deer. But it's like, why did it? Could the leopard have taken the fawn on head first? Yeah, straight up, totally. But they don't want the fight.
They
And
want
so it's
easy
like,
money. Yeah.
they want, and so it's the hunt, that part of it. And so it's like, it always goes back to that. So if you look like you're going to be putting up a little bit of a fight, well, maybe there's where we're at. We're at deselection, where we're at the 82% game, and we're not even throwing a punch, So that's the part that I think I get. It bothers me, because then they're not addressing the freeze response. I have so in Stockholm, Sweden, there's a hospital there that did a study, and they interviewed 298 women after a rape. Okay. And they had 73% of them said that they experienced what was called tonic immobility. Their body just froze. Okay. So when you're looking at that percentage, I had a woman that came into our gym. This was probably about a year and a half ago. And she was upset because she had been to like 3 different, we have a lot of like sheriff's self-defense courses around here where they all put on the big suit and they spend 2 hours, and then you just get to beat up the shit out of this guy wearing the red suit. And I'm sorry, that's ineffective. If you have 2 hours, that's not what's going to make them safer. Okay. Because what happens is, and I tried to, she had been attacked. She was a male woman, and she had been attacked on her route. And so she was in our gym, obviously, to, she wanted to not let that happen again. And she was, crying and just very upset and everything. And she was mad at herself. And I think this is the other part too. The piece is the after part that people are not, there's the physical, yeah, absolutely. But then mentally, she froze, and nobody talks about that piece of,
Yeah.
oh, my body froze. What's even the guilt you're feeling? It's not completely
Yeah.
unfounded, obviously, but you're still going to feel that. The first
Mm.
thing a police officer is going to ask you is like, what did you do? Did you fight back? And it's just like, oh, well, maybe I didn't. Your body didn't let you. And
Mm.
so when you start hitting this, she was upset because, she froze, and she was just like, I've taken these courses. And I was like, and I was trying to explain to her, I said, look around.
Mm.
And I was like, all these boys in here, they are in their early 20s, mid 20s. They are in peak physical condition. Okay. They come in here 6 days a week. They spend hours and they do the same 6 combos over and over and over. So they have the hour, they have the time in this, right? And I was like, when they get into the cage, it is all they can do to string just 2 combos together. And
Mm.
it's like, so what makes any self-defense course think that it's going to be effective by teaching women to get out of a hair grab in the first 2 hours? That's not going to do shit, because we have a 73% chance that they're going to freeze.
Yeah.
We have bigger things that we need to address
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
So
It's very interesting, and you're touching on a point that's crucial. And if I can add to that, basically, in the way that we teach, okay, to kind of deal with the freeze response, we always speak about the 4F: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Yeah, but basically, the freeze effect comes with. You familiar with Jeff Cooper's color code? Yeah.
yes, oh yeah,
So yeah, I always like to say that, with each color conditions there is a heart rate associated with it. And so when you go on code red, for example, depending on what sort of person you are, how desensitized to your adrenaline you are, how much you
right,
know it, once your heart rate goes above 145, 175, 225 beats per minute, that's what's happening. You obviously already a long time ago, from 90, 100 beats per minute, you already go from parasympathetic nervous system to
right,
sympathetic nervous system. And so when this happens, you got a myriad of things happening, like the tunnel vision, hyperventilation, decrease of fine motor skills, shaky limbs, time distortion, auditory exclusion, like all the little things that are happening. And so once you go to that stage where, once your heart rate goes a certain past a certain threshold, then you get into that freeze state, this mental and emotional state of freeze, where you want to fight but you can't, you're petrified. You want to yell but no sound is coming out, but
right,
because the salivary glands have been shut down. And you're like, at that point, the way that we teach to kind of break free from this freeze effect is understanding that the way that you get into this freeze effect comes with a very nasty inhale. Okay, so let's say you're taking your shopping in your car. Okay, so you open the trunk of your car, you're putting your shopping there. Let's say you are not street smart, which you should be. You should be situationally aware, you should be looking around. But let's say you are not, and you're in a parking lot. There's no one, you're on your own, and all of a sudden you're surprised by a large male that just kind of put his hand on your shoulder and grabs you. Your first response will be and it will not be a healthy inhale. It will be like an inhale with everything is tense inside. And the problem is that very often you're not going to exhale. You're going to try to exhale, but you're just going to hold your breath, because that's
right,
when you freeze. That's what happened when you freeze. And so the way, and I mean, I'm saying it's easier said than done. Fuck's sake, you need to put that in training. You need to actually get that in training, adrenalize people, and get them to get over that psychological and emotional shock to deal with the adrenal dump, depending on what type of adrenal dump you have. But the secret is really to exhale forcefully. I always said to people, you need to exhale forcefully, And the best way to excel forcefully is to go right through the target at the same time. It's to start fighting.
Right.
So, and the only way to break free from the freeze effect is to fight, is to breathe out forcefully and to fight at the same time. So something
But
that
that's a
needs
simple thing, like what you just said, is how do you combat that in fight right there? And that's
mm,
one thing somebody can just remember. I've got to breathe out right now.
yeah,
And that's because that's not 15,000 different things. No, it's just like, hey, if I'm going to get to moving, which is the important part, is just to at least move. Okay.
yeah,
Then I've got to breathe out. That's excellent. I think that's great. Uh, I would add this too, because I talk about a lot about not necessarily like fights, but it's also about survival or stressful things, right? Um, and so I talk about, you have to get your heart rate down, okay, or
hmm,
you're going to gas. So
yeah,
one of the things we talk about is like, and I actually tested this because I had to go have a
mm,
cardiac stress test done because I'm over 40. And if I was going to do this MMA fight and get my license, I have to go get that done. So it's like, anyway. So I was testing this while I was doing my cardiac stress test. Um, but it's like you have to get in order for your heart rate. So like they teach you in box breathing, right? In for four,
breath
out for
work.
four, whatever. Right.
Few
Okay.
second in.
Right. But that's
Yeah.
not going to get your heart rate down. Okay. Your heart rate,
Mm,
it's like what you just explained. It skyrockets very
mm,
fast, right? So you have to get your heart rate down in order to not gas, right? So if you're over here hyperventilating, freaking out, trying to deal, like say after for my situation, was in a car accident and you're like, oh my gosh, um,
mm,
you have to get that heart rate down so that you don't gas out. And so it helps in boxing, it helps in a lot of different things. So you have to have that exhale longer than your inhale.
mm-hmm.
So like breathing in. So I'm like, with that young kid I was telling you about the other day, he's like gassing out because he's just put all this effort into it. It's like in for 4, out for 8, dude. And so I'm a huge, huge proponent of like obviously practicing breath work and things like that, making sure, because there's a lot of times where that has definitely helped me out.
Mm,
Another one I call is like, compartmentalizing, pushing fear off to the side. I use a story of rock climbing where I remember I would get to the top and then I'd realize, holy shit, like I'm like 100 feet in the air. And
mm,
if I mess up, I could fall. I'm getting ready to go back on belay here.
mm,
And it's like how you take your fear and it's right here and you mentally, visually just push it over here
mm-hmm.
so that I
Yeah.
can focus on the task at hand. And what's interesting is like a lot of people will be like, no, you're just trying to forget that fear. No, you're not forgetting it. You're just pushing it off to the side. Because trust me,
Mm,
this shit's coming back later. Okay. It's going to come
mm-hmm.
back and your body's going to deal. But
Mm,
you do have to address what you can do. So it's like, I'm scared of over here.
mm,
And sometimes you have to do that several times. Like I had a situation, my oldest son has special needs and we live on 40 acres. And when he was 14, he got lost and he ended up being like 9 miles from our home. And he knew our trails, but the trails got cut and he got lost. And we had, 40 people outside looking for him. He was gone for 6 hours. And I remember like you'd start to panic and I'd be like, my heart rate start going up and I'm like, oh my gosh, we're not going to find my kid. And I'd be like, and then I'd be like, we're
mm.
going to find my kid. And now we're
Yeah.
back to thought rejection. So we've got compartmentalizing. Now we've got thought rejection. We will find my kid. Well, I had to do that like, I don't know, 5 times throughout the course of
Mm,
the evening where I'd start to, what if we don't? What if we don't? What if we don't? Nope, we will.
mm.
So anyway, sorry, that was a bunny trail on your.
No, no, no. That's that. Fear is a massive topic as well. Yeah, I'm having Tony Blauer on as well soon, so he will definitely have a lot of things to say about this. But when it comes to fear, what you just said, great example how to how did you say
Compartmentalize.
compartmentalize fear, which is basically, have you heard the people saying like, oh, fear is like a degree of healthy fear, it's healthy, it's going to save you. I mean, to some degree, I don't really agree with that. I think that people mistake the acknowledgement of danger and the fear.
Yes, I
These are
agree with
two
yes.
different things. These are two
Right.
very different things, because one of them tells you, right, if I keep going that way over there, there is danger and my life could be in danger. That's just the acknowledgement of danger. And that, yes, indeed, is useful. But all the thoughts that come after that, oh shit, if I go there, I'm gonna die. I could get shot, I could get stabbed, I could get that. And that is getting in the way of your task. And that's why I said fear could get you killed, you know?
I agree wholeheartedly. It has to be.
Mm.
I'm not saying like I think you should, there's it's just the concept of doing something, we'll do it scared. Well, that's fine too. You're gonna be scared. Like I feel like anybody not saying you're not gonna be scared, but it does like the panic has to be over here or you're not gonna be able to focus. Like you have to. It's funny, I talk about like I was in a car accident in January and it was really bad. And when I got out of the car, my car got hit several times afterwards. And I had to call, like people had already called 911, but I'm on a dark, like I had hydroplaned, I'm on an interstate. My car's black. It's a giant, Suburban. And it was just this giant tank. And the headlights were knocked out. It kept getting hit. And, people are you're sitting here watching a slow 10-minute long wreck because people just kept hitting it. And also I'm in the middle of a highway. I cannot get off of at the one point I couldn't get off the highway. And it's like, I remember I called my mom and she was just like, you sounded hysterical. And I was like, really? Because it was like, I was breathing heavily, obviously, but I remember my training and stuff in my head. And she's like, you sounded that way, but I was still able to so it's funny. It's like you can sound like you're all just like whacked out. But I mean, I was like going through this stuff. I was like, okay, I got to get over here. Okay, well, I got to make this decision here. I got to jump this concrete thing. Oh, I had to drag a guy over the concrete barrier because we had another car that came at us, like it is weird. So it's like you can also perception is always something that's funny too.
Maybe because she was your mother as well. She could definitely sense that there was something
right
wrong. Do you
and
know
I
what
think
I mean?
that's interesting. You could be scared. Like I was just like, oh my gosh, what do I do? You assess your damage, but then I'm also like, I remember the car rolled and I remember in my head, and this is how I know like training saved me in that, because I'm rolling and my instant thought was, as soon as this car stops, it is not safe for me to be in this car and I need to immediately get out. So it was like seatbelt, phone, boom, and it was like, it was crazy. It was really neat.
It's nice. It's nice when
Don't
you.
recommend it.
It's good when you look back and you're like, right, my reactions were on point. I thought about what I needed to think at the moment when I needed to think about it,
Right.
and I acted on time. It's like the OODA loop worked really, really well.
Right.
So that's what you want. So earlier on, you spoke about something I want to kind of maybe dive a bit into a bit more. You spoke about the fence. Obviously, everybody that knows about Jeff Thompson knows about the fence and the personal space management, like management of personal space or situational control, which is a very, very important thing when somebody's approaching you, somebody that you don't know. And so I know that Craig Douglas is big on that stuff as well. The management of personal space, having your hands up, kind of asking people just to stay back. So how do you? I know that I work on the fence a lot, and it's something that I teach a lot. And I realize that when I teach martial artists, when you teach the fence to martial artists, their fence is very, very combative, and you're like, no, 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 no. You just relax, man, because they put their hands up like in a. Although they think it's a fence, you can clearly see it's almost like a fighting stance. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I'm like, dude, just look at yourself in the mirror and just relax. Just make that fence alive. Like you should be able to talk. Your hands should be moving, like you're just talking, like Italian people talking with their hands.
Right.
You should just be able to talk completely relaxed. The goal of the fence is to have that platform between you and the threat, and he doesn't even know it. That's the goal of the fence. The invisible fence, and then there's all different types of fences. You got the psychological fence, the invisible fence, long fence, short fence, mid fence, low fence, high fence, compressed fence. And these guys fence. Do you know what I mean? All that stuff.
Right.
So it's like I think that's a really, really important aspect of training as well in self-protection, is learning to have your hands halfway up already, just in case the guy decides to sucker punch you or to
Right.
do something. At least from there, you got this platform that you can launch from. So you can launch your attack from this platform, like a non-obtrusive, non-aggressive, deceptive platform that you can also kind of cover up really
Right.
fast if the guy decides to attack you. And plus, in front of CCTV footage, you're not looking like the bad guy, you
Right.
know. And you know now, every Tom, Dick, and Harry's got a mobile phone. Everyone is filming you when you have trouble. Instead of coming to help you, they get their phones out and they start filming you. So, you know, before you know it, if you appear to be the aggressive subject, then you got your video on all over social media next day, and you're like, you know, it's kind of trying to get yourself out of this if you got to go to court after, you know.
Right.
So how do you teach this to women, the management of personal space?
So you know when you go back, okay, so you were talking about the Jeff Cooper's like codes, right?
Yeah.
So like I agree with those. I don't teach them because I think it goes back to, it's like back to the time I have, right? And
Mm-hmm.
also it's like if you're having to remember, oh, I'm in code yellow, or oh, I'm in code, red
Yeah.
or whatever. It's like you're back to remembering different variables again.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm kind of like, one of the things, I do what's called an ask, tell, yell. Okay. And what are we trying to do? Well, the whole point of this is we're trying to determine whether or not this person has good intent or bad intent. Okay. That's it. So the ask is, hey, can you hold up a second? And it's basically getting them to stop at
Mm-hmm.
like, if they're approaching, 10 to 15 feet, whatever it takes. Okay. So that they're not in my space. And then understanding that you've already made this decision for yourself that you're going to be in a defensive mode for sure if that
Mm-hmm.
person is crossing that boundary. Well, what
Yeah.
are things that they might, and that's the other thing too. A person with good intent, if you say, hey, can you hold up a second? They're going to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I used an example of this with cars. They had a situation where there were uh, these guys would slam on their brakes in Tulsa,
Mm.
and then the women would hit the car, and then they would get out automatically because you were like, "Oh shit, I hit your car. I'm really sorry." Blah blah blah. And then pretty soon, they get out. We assess the damage. And so I use this example of that where it's just like, don't get out of the car. You can
Mm.
roll down, you can give a little bit of the window here, you can give your information, but immediately we're calling 911. And here's the, I'm really sorry, sir. I know I hit your car. I'm really sorry. I hope you're okay. I have the cops coming right now. I swear to you, I'm really sorry. And we can get this sorted out. But I don't feel safe getting out of the car with you. A person with good intent, no matter, I don't care how pissed they are that you hit their car, okay? They're going to be like, that's fine. The cops are fine. You're trying to solve the issue. It's okay. I have a wife. I've got daughters. I wouldn't want them to get out of the car on a highway with a strange man
Mm-hmm.
either. That's good intent, okay? A person with bad intent is going to be like, lady, you hit my fucking car. Like, you're not even going to get out to see if I'm okay, assess the damage. We could solve this. Why are you calling the cops? We could, you know what I mean? Like, and
Mm.
so at the end of the day, it's kind of like a person with good intent. If you've drawn a boundary at 10 feet
Yeah.
and they're still trying, then they have a different motive.
They got an
And so
agenda then.
at
Yeah.
that point, the fence just automatically, for me, is teaching for women, just goes into defensive. And I don't give a shit if they look like their hands are up. At least that's the point. When we get into weapons, like with knives, at that point, if that person's kind of crossed that threshold and I've asked, it's like an ask, tell, yell, and that's where we get into Craig Douglas, where he teaches, you need to have a playlist. For me, it's just like, hey, can you hold up a second? I said stop.
Mm.
So at that point, if they're still taking that step forward after I said stop, I'm
Mm.
probably going to be drawing my knife at that point. They have
Preempt.
done, yeah. And I'm going to be like, and so it's like, the playlist is just like, hey, can you hold up a second? I said stop, back
Mm.
the fuck up. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where I'm at. And so at that point, it very quickly escalates like to, and I think that's the thing, is just that how are these criminals doing it? Well, they're slithering up into your space by
Yeah.
deception and then landing that initial blow that's
Mm.
going to stun the shit out of you. So it's like, how do we prevent that part? So like the fence, I think, is really interesting for like bouncers and things like that, because it's just like they're coming up, you
Yeah.
know, and all that. But yeah, teaching to keep your hands up, that's always a fun. I mean, that's one's hard even to teach in boxing. You're always just
Mm,
whacking somebody with the
mm.
here's hitting mitts. Get your hands up.
Yeah, you know that's one point that you made, that the way that people get in your personal space, they will use deceptive dialogue and deceptive kinesis
Right.
to do so. And so, very often we speak about the interview stage of an you got time, yeah?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, cool, cool,
I'm
cool.
pouring my coffee into my
All
cup.
right, all right, okay, cool. Yes, so we speak about the interview stage where actually people they're gonna find something to say to get close to you. Yeah.
Yes.
Or like Jeff Thompson used to call it the 4D. I like to call it the 5D. So you got dialogue,
Yep.
deception, distraction, distance, destruction. So
Yep.
basically, they're using dialogue in order to be deceptive, in order to deceive you so that they can close the distance, so that they can destroy you. So once you understand this type of predatory tactic, predatory encroachment tactics, then you're like, wait a second, I recognize that. I'm not falling for the shit. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah, it's kind of really understanding how predators do operate, how they approach you, and what their tactics are, so that you can be aware of it and not fall for it. And
Right.
like, hey, what's your thoughts on preemption?
What do you mean?
Preemption I mean, do something first. I mean,
Oh, I don't have a problem with it. If they're up in my space at that point, like if
yeah,
they're
yeah,
right
yeah,
there, I'm not gonna think, yeah, no, I
yeah.
don't
You're
have
not
any
waiting
problems.
for
Like,
confirmation that, yeah.
well, and the other part is too is you're playing the psychology game too, even with weapons. And so it's like if that, I've already said, hey, can you hold up a second? I said stop. So then
Mm,
if I'm drawing, my knife, I'm gonna stand right here and be like, because at the end of the day, it's just they're gonna look at that while I'm looking around. Obviously you're looking for third party or whatever, but it's like, do you really want to mess with that bitch? Like that's
mm,
where it is. It's just like,
mm.
is her purse or whatever she have worth you
Worth,
getting sliced over?
worth the
So no,
problem.
I don't have, and it's funny too because there's this saying where it's like a shower never stabs and a stabber never shows. And
Yeah,
part of me is just kind of like, if you're gonna draw that knife, make sure you're willing to use it. Yeah, I don't have a problem with
exactly.
that. But it's like sometimes that's what it takes to be like, hey, you don't want to mess with me. And it's
Mm,
not saying like, you can't overtake me or something, but I'm definitely going to get a few things in on you with
yeah.
that. So no, I do think like, yeah, striking first, I don't have a problem with that. I teach the power slaps a lot.
Mhm, mhm.
That's one of eye shots, obviously. So those are two I teach. Those are the two strikes I teach. I don't teach punches or anything like that. I don't even teach elbows in that 3-hour course. I teach power slaps of like, oh gosh, and being scared and then being able to be explosive with that
Mhm,
hit
mm.
right off the bat. Because I think it's punches are, yeah. I am a huge fan of the eye shot. I know that's controversial in a lot of different ways. I don't really care. I think it's effective.
Attacking
Um,
twice.
Yeah. There's
Yeah,
some people that
I
get like
can understand
super.
that,
I
yeah.
don't believe, like, I don't teach the whole like gouging with your thumbs bit. I
Mm.
think that, but I teach the strike.
Yeah, yeah, the eye job.
Yeah. So I mean that one I'm a huge fan of. If they're in my space and they've hit that, and I talk about that with women, we discuss that too, because before they're even allowed to like throw the like a power slap, I make sure that they are within this space. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, if your hands are up, and that's the other thing too, is I talk about being very, what's natural about your hands being here. I was recently in the last, this was probably about a year and a half ago, I was put in a position, I was very vulnerable and it was the first time that I was actually genuinely like, if I don't de-escalate this situation, I'm
Mhm.
not going to walk out of here
Right.
without being hurt. And it was very natural for me to be like this. I was standing there. I was like, okay, like
Mm.
this. that's a great position to be in, especially if they're like kind of up in your space. So that's what I teach is like your hands are up here, right? Okay, cool. So, ooh, you know, and then that's where we're launching from. So getting them to understand, you know, yeah, that space and stuff like that. And then also to be able to frame in and stuff like that, you know, like if they're going to launch, okay, well, now we're here, you know, it's like what you were doing earlier. Craig's great with cover outs when he teaches that too. So all of that, and then it all ties in later on, you know. So yeah, I think that was your question.
I like this approach of striking from deception. Do you know what I mean? Kind of
Yeah.
using this. Oh, you know, I'm scared. Please don't hurt me. And bam, just hit him. Like use deception. That's something I think is useful for women. You know, you don't want to play that person. You don't want to play a man at his own game. He's stronger. What you want to do is kind of play the game, make him believe that he's going to get what he wants, so he drop his guard, and when his guard is down, then just fucking blitz through him. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
So,
I am scared. That was the other part too. Is even
yeah.
if my hands are up here, and it's like, oh, I am scared, but I'm still gonna like, I'm still gonna, you know, go to town if I can, whatever it takes. I don't care. I guess I'm going down swinging.
So getting back to what you were saying earlier on, you know, about assertiveness, I think that's a very, very important aspect as well, because a lot of people, especially women, have got difficulties finding the balance between passiveness and aggressiveness, you know, and aggression. And it's like, okay, you don't want to be aggressive, because if you're aggressive, you're challenging people. And depending on the person that you have in front of you, they might take you out on that challenge. So it's like earlier, not too long ago, I had one of my students from the US who lives in Thailand asking me about this, because he's almost being mugged by a group of young people in Thailand. And he was saying to me, I was in the shop and I've seen them, they've seen me. And I asked him, I said, so how was the initial eye contact? How was that initial contact with the eyes? Did you actually get them to understand that you acknowledged them, that you know that you were there, that you've seen them, that you knew they were there, and being like kind of assertive? And he was kind of trying to explain to him, okay, so let's say if you were passive, you would have seen them, they would have given you the eyes, and you would have looked somewhere else. Yeah, that would have been victim body language straight away. They would have perceived you as being a victim. If you would have been aggressive and they would have looked at you, and you would have started looking at them like this, then you would have challenged them, and they would have probably taken you on that challenge straight away in that shop. Yeah. But assertiveness is kind of, okay, you look at them neutral, no fear in your eyes, no aggression, but no fear, just almost slightly disinterested. We're kind of looking at them for 3 seconds, big marks, not less than that, because get them to understand that you've seen them, you understood what game they're playing at, you understood that they're there, but then continue doing your thing. Yeah. And if that happens again, I mean, after it really depends. I'm coming from a background like in urban combatives, where it's all about kind of at some point it's just posturing aggression. Do you know what I mean? If I got a team of 2-3 guys, yeah, that are obviously showing me that they got some unhealthy interest in me, I'll look at them the first time. I'll be assertive. I won't be aggressive. I won't be passive. I'll be assertive. I'll make them understand I've seen them. Yeah. I'll continue do my thing. In the next time I see them, if they're looking at me, let's say the example, he was in that shop, that hardware shop. Yeah. Next time, if I see them, they're still looking at me and they're getting closer, I would have grabbed the first claw hammer from the shelf, and I would have fucking stand in front of them, and I would have looked at them straight in the eyes. Do you know what I mean? Like, so.
Well, that's where I was saying is like the very first drill that I teach is sorry, I can't help you, you know, and it is about getting women to meet eyes is very, very hard. And I think that the posturing between men and women is very different too, because men, you know, it is like what you said, it's a game. It's like verbal pushing blows. It's alpha, you know.
Yeah.
And for women, it's like, I think it goes from 0 to like you know, 100 very, very fast
Yeah.
in order for a predator to, you know what I mean? So it's like for that first initial thing, yeah, it's like I'm brushing you. I want you to know, yeah, I see you. And I
Hmm.
want you to know that I'm going to be the first one that's going to be raising a freaking ruckus if you even come near my
Yeah,
space. You know what I
exactly.
mean? It's almost like I'm going to Karen the shit out of this, like only in a violent way.
Hmm.
Violent
Plant
Karen.
the flag. Plant the black flag with a bony head on it, like.
Right. Well, and that's where it comes into like I think our posturing just looks different. I maybe not. I don't know. I think with I think women can actually very much where they get I you know, we talked about the Chihuahua mentality, and it's just that where they can get up to a point is, and I'm talking about like being attacked by like a, you know, a male predator or something like that, you know, where they look to the point to where it's like that person wants to take them down a peg or two, you
Hmm.
know, where it's just like, oh, well, I'll show that bitch, you know what I mean? So I think that could be, I don't think that's as common in my
Yeah.
opinion. I think with, okay, the get off is on fear. And if you're fighting back, then you're the mentality is then that it's not worth it. So
Mm.
I think that that's for women, you know, I think that that's a different thing. For men, it's the conquer. I think for that predator, it's just like, well, I conquered that man. It's not, he's not getting off on that fear. It's
Yeah,
the,
yeah, yeah.
you know, so I don't know. Maybe I could be wrong. I don't know. I'm just sitting here thinking.
You know, you're right. I think that you know, for men it might be a bit different because you know you can get in that staring contest of you know like I'm not dropping the eyes until you fucking do. Do you know what I mean? It's like
Right.
it's a different thing. But what I'm talking really is about these defense mechanism that we all do possess. And if you look into the animal kingdom, yeah, you have a look at the frog, for example. The frog has got that defense mechanism that she it goes like it goes massive, yeah, like
Yeah.
the balloon fish. You know, the balloon fish just goes puff, and all the spikes are coming out. The hedgehog, exactly the same thing. The gorilla taps on his chest. You know, the grizzly bear that goes on his back legs and start growling. That every single animal has got this sort of way of making themselves look bigger, more intimidating. You know, it's
Right.
like almost like an intimidating way. And yes, for a man, it might be a bit more easy than for women, or most women at least. But like the simple fact of you know, kind of drawing your weapon, like you were saying earlier
Right.
on, like that's you getting the nails out in terms of you know in the animal kingdom.
Right.
That's
Absolutely.
you showing you coming near me. You're getting some of this. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So I think to a certain extent it's a good thing, but then again, you know, if you live in your neck of the wood where people can carry firearms legally, then now you're like, fuck,
Right.
I don't know if I want to draw a blade. You know, they say don't bring a knife to a gunfight.
Right.
I mean, sometimes you know about the 21-foot rule, yeah.
Right.
It's like it's difficult to draw your gun efficiently from that sort of distance. Somebody comes at you with a blade from within the 21 feet. It's going to be difficult to draw
Right.
your gun unless you got that footwork and you go circular. You know what I mean? But I'm digressing here. What I'm saying is that I might not want to get my knife out systematically in America because I'm like, shit, what if the dude is carrying a gun? Do you know what I mean?
Right. I think when we're talking about that, the gun aspect of it, and it, I think that Craig's classes do a very good job of that
Mm,
concept of seeing it, because by the time you're pulling out your knife, you're talking at about a 5 foot space that's very, very fast
yeah.
closing in. They're not drawing that gun at that point. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like,
Hmm.
um, so I think one of the things that I liked about that is the 21-foot rule. Okay.
Yeah.
I like how Craig basically shows, because a lot of the men in, and I think women too, I think women do this as well. It's not the same, or it's the same thing, but well, I just draw my gun and shoot him. And Craig shows that no, you won't, because pretty soon they're in your space and then you can't.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
I'm telling you, this is, I think what's eye-opening is I think that you have that, well, just because I have a gun and all this stuff, it really doesn't. I watch all these evolutions that Craig has where they're having to walk through these scenes with somebody walking up. One of the best ones I love that he uses for men is having someone walk up to them and be like, "Are you taking pictures of my kid? Holy shit, you sick fuck. Give me your phone. Like, you're taking pictures of this guy's taking pictures of my kid on the park, you know?" And you see these guys where they're like, these are big, tough guys, you know, they've probably been on a combat tour over in Iraq or something like that. And they're like, because they're appalled. So it's the mental part of like, hey, they're not dumb. They know that this dad might be a threat, kind of, but then everybody around them now is a threat because these people around them think that, oh, this guy's taking pictures of their kid. And what, you know, earlier our conversation was very much like, you know, what's the first thing we think of? And they're not going to put this guy on trial, right? They're going to, this guy's taking pictures of the kid. So this guy's not stupid. He knows that, oh my gosh, I am 100% in danger right now if I don't de-escalate this situation.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so Craig, I love how he's explaining, how do I de-escalate? How do I set my pride aside of, no, I'm not taking pictures of your kid, asshole. Like setting that aside to be like, how do we take care of this? Of, hey, I've got my phone. It's just like, whoa, 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 whoa. Hey, I'm not. I'll show you my phone. Let's call the cops. Let's get the cops here. I'll show you my phone, paying attention, looking around, seeing, you know, who else around. Because a person that's actually taking pictures of kids is going to flee. Okay. A person that's a good person. And I think people around them are going to understand, hey, I get it. Let's call, I'm calling the cops. I'm calling 911 right now. Let's get the cops here. We'll sort it out. The cop can look at my phone. And at the same time, you're still keeping these people at a distance that's safe and stuff like that. And so I think that the gun, because sometimes I've seen that scenario play out too, where the dad just rushes them because he thinks that's the case. And pretty soon, you know, one of them draws a gun. And that's the thing too, is that like, I would say 65% of all of these evolutions that I've seen, that the person carrying the gun either cannot draw their gun. They're incapable of drawing their gun and they get overtaken. Or they introduce their gun and the timing is wrong and their own gun is used on them. And that is where it's just like, I think everybody thinks that the gun is like this, and it is, don't get me wrong, it's a good equalizer, but it's also, if not trained with, you know, so it's not stress shooting is not standing isosceles shooting at a paper target. So
you get a lot of people getting killed by their own gun, like just like lack of training. So I want to get into guns. Just one thing that you just mentioned before that I'd like to get into before we get into guns. What about de-escalation tactics? So you see, when you look into the world of self-protection, like a lot of people speak about de-escalation tactics, but a lot of people don't really go in depth into it. Very often it's just, hey man, I don't want no problem. Just stay away from me. Just, you know, that, you know, that's really where it gets at. But I really like Richard Dimitri's work, which I said to you, I'll introduce you to Richard. You'll love his work. You'll become the new fan. You'll see. So Richard Dimitri and Pamela, what they say is that various ways in which you can de-escalate, but basically is fish for empathy. So by fishing for empathy, it gives you, first of all, it gives you the possibility to really de-escalate the situation. If you're dealing with social violence, so social violence is when you're dealing with a good person having a bad day. So let's say you're dealing with that family man who had a really bad day at work. His boss been yelling at him because he was late for some work, so he had to stay late at work. He was meant to go and see his son football match, but he couldn't make it because he had to stay at work. So he had his boss giving it to him. He knows when he gets home, his son is going to be upset because he couldn't make it to his football match. And on the top of that, he knows his wife is going to give it to him as well because he wasn't there. So Do you know what I mean? He's had a shit day, and he said to himself, "Do you know what? Fuck this. I'm going to the pub, have a few beers." Yeah, and he goes to the pub, and let's say you're there with your friend, and you're talking to your friend, you're joking with your friend. Your friend says, "Hey, Christun, get me a beer," and I'm like, "Yeah, sure," and you just turn around and boom, you just bump into that guy and just spill his beers all over his shirt. And now he's looking at you, and you just the cherry on the cake. You know, he's like, he's just going off his tits. He's just going crazy because of his strength. But at the end of the day, it's still a good guy having a bad day. He's not a criminal. He's not a narcissist.
Yes.
He's not a sociopath or a psychopath. So 9 times out of 10 in these sort of settings, which we call social violence, you'll be able to de-escalate the situation. So by fishing for empathy, I mean, there's 2 things you could do. The guy is calling you a cunt now because you spilled his drink, and you could go, "Who the fuck you calling a cunt, man?" Do you know what I mean? Like,
yes,
like you could just escalate it now, or you could go, "Oh, listen, man, I'm really sorry, man. I didn't see you, man. Listen, let me get you those beers again, man. Barman, can you get a couple of beers for this guy? I'm really sorry, man. Here is $20 for your dry cleaning, man. That's the best I can do, man. I'm really sorry, dude." Do you know what I mean? And now you look at him, and by fishing for empathy, now it gives you an opportunity to find out what sort of person you have in front of you. Are you dealing with a good guy having a bad day, or are you dealing with some sort of narcissist or some sort of sociopath or worse? So now, if you're dealing with a good guy having a bad day, 9 times out of 10, by treating by trying to de-escalate that way, he might go, "Right, do you know what? You're all right, man. You're cool, man. Just watch where you're going next time, bro. But it's cool, man. Don't worry about it." You know what I mean? So, but if you're dealing with somebody that has an agenda, somebody that goes in his head, I'm going through that dude. I don't give a fuck what he's saying to me. I'm going through that dude. So now you try to fish for empathy. What's gonna happen is when you hand him this $20 for his dry cleaning, yeah, the sociopath is going to slap those $20 out of your hand, say, "I don't give a fuck." Do you know what I mean? And so now you know who you have in front of you. You know what sort of person you have in front of you. So now you got the element of surprise as well. You know about the CQB principle, yeah, surprise, speed, and violence of action. So you can actually use that to your advantage now, because you've tried everything you could in terms of de-escalation tactics. You've done it the right way, as opposed to, "Oh, chill out, man. I didn't do it in purpose." You know, the man is not going to chill out. You just spilled his drink, you know?
Yeah.
So how do you go about teaching de-escalation tactics from a women point of view?
I don't. Okay, I think this is where the difference and I'm trying to think of a scenario where I mean, I think, okay, first of all, I think with just de-escalation, I think people don't grasp the concept that your pride needs to get out of there. Okay. And I think that's what makes, like, again, Craig so effective, is that here's this guy who is a badass. He's got the, resume to prove that this guy is not one to be reckoned with. And at the end of the day, he's still teaching you to be like, "Hey, man," he's still teaching you to be that one that's going to de-escalate to get at it. Because at the end of the day, your pride is not worth, again, priorities of getting home safely to your family. Same with road rage and stuff like that. How would I deal with, okay, that's the one I'm sitting here thinking about. If I'm going to de-escalate, it'd be like some road rage incident. Maybe I cut somebody off and this guy followed me to a parking lot. To be quite honest with you, if I see that this guy followed me to the parking lot, I'm not going to get out of my car. I'm just going to call 911. Pissed off people in line, in a bar or something like that. I don't think that, I really think that that's maybe we've hit on I don't know. If you could think of a scenario for me, I'd be curious.
Let's say, okay, let's differentiate a social violence setting and an anti-social violence setting. So social violence setting would be in a social environment, in the pub, at the queue of Walmart. Somebody jumps in the queue, or for a parking space, or like you said, road rage. These are all social violence settings.
Right. Yeah. I do the same thing you said. I mean, that's the very first. It's just like, "Oh shit, I'm sorry here. You know what? Take it." That's not a big deal. I mean, nothing, again, someone cutting in front of you and that, like, 2 minutes of your time being taken up is not worth what could happen. So like I'm with you, like I'm gonna let, be like, I mean, I might go to my car and be a little bit more irritated, but it's fine,
It's not all smiling and then get back in the car, yeah, stabbing the steering wheel like
I was there first. No, I mean, I agree with you. Yeah, it would be just probably similar to that same situation of just like, hey, it's okay. And also, if someone cut or they're being rude or I did this, I'll step back and let them go. Because again, it is like what you said. There has to be an empathy thing. Maybe the person is
yeah,
just having a bad day, and
yeah.
that sucks. And if I can make their day a little bit better and suck less, then I guess that's fine too. Like,
sometimes that's what I say. Sometimes just a smile can just change people's day. Like
right,
sometimes just smiling to somebody can just completely transform their day. I know it
right.
happened to me. So yeah, for sure. So let's talk about guns then, shall we?
Okay.
So when it comes to firearm, obviously it's something, in the UK, I still maintain my training with airsoft. That's the best thing that we can do here in the UK because nothing real is legal. So, but how often then do you train? Do you actually go to the shooting range? Do you sweep the house? I do sweep my house every day.
So I'm pretty blessed. I live on
Yeah.
40 acres.
Mm,
So I have my own little range.
nice.
So that's nice. So I have that. So I can shoot whenever I want. I got my little guys down there. They're all
Hmm.
dressed up with people. And then, so I don't have to worry about that. I do a lot like of the force on force training. So we'll do like with simunition and things like that. So I've
Oh yeah,
definitely been shot up a few times, consequently,
yeah.
like here. So I don't know what that says
So
about.
well, I mean, that's good. That's good to kind of mark and remember where you're getting shot,
Right, right.
so that
Uh,
next time in training, you kind of maybe sometimes. I mean, I don't know exactly what's happening, but when people get shot in here, when you do the gun disarm thing, which I'm not a big fan of all that stuff. Gun grappling, then got the gun disarm. But let's say, when you kind of bring your hands and just think in terms of the concept there is to bring your hands, comply, bring your hands as close as possible to the weapon, clear off the line of fire, grab the limb, ideally apply a 2-on-1 and then blitz through the guy with everything that you got left. In terms of the concept, that's what I'd be thinking. But see, when you got your hands and you remove yourself from the line of fire and you grab the gun, yeah, very often people don't remove themselves fast enough and they get tagged in the shoulder, they get shot in the shoulder. So is that what happened to you?
yeah, I think usually when I'm shot, I'm in the fight, like on the ground. So
Oh right, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know. I honestly have no idea. Like yeah, that's funny though.
So what do you carry?
So I carry a Glock 43 in my backpack. So that's where I have it. I have it. It's funny, actually, tomorrow I'm getting ready to do a little carrying video because I don't carry on my person usually.
Okay.
Um, I think that how you carry is a very, very personal choice, or even if you choose to carry,
Yeah.
and I will not knock anybody for how they want to do that. I do care that they train
Mm-hmm.
too. So I practice like how I zip and pull out, however,
Yeah.
whatever it is. And also what scenarios that I'm going to, what I would do. Why would I want to draw my gun in the first place in that scenario? What are the variables for that? Am I gonna, is there a crowd? Is there like, am I gonna shoot somebody if I'm gonna draw this thing? You know what I mean? Like things like that. So I carry in my backpack. I really am looking, and this is kind of where there's like a growth thing, I think, in the I like the fanny pack things that people are doing now. I think those are neat. I'm not going to wear a fanny pack, so I've been kind of looking at more of a cross body
Okay.
thing that's
Yeah.
tight.
Yeah.
I do not like, I say that the backpack, I'm not a huge fan of like the slingish purses. Again, personal choice with people. Like I really like, there are people that can make it work so good.
Yeah.
um but yeah, I carry a backpack, and that's where I have mine. So I have a Glock 43 in there. Um, but yeah,
So Glock 43, it's a bit of a more compact Glock, yeah?
Yep, it's a little compact 9mm.
9mm, yeah. So what do you get? Do you get 7 + 1 in the chamber?
6. So it's a little. I have a Shield 2.0 Plus, and that one can get 13 in.
Okay.
And it's about the same size as that little Glock 40, a little bit bigger. And I like it. I think it's a lot of fun. That's the one I take to courses. So when I'm at courses or something like that, and I do practice like drawing, like I appendix carry.
Yeah.
In that regard. And maybe it'll get to that point. I don't know. I like to practice all of it, like just screw around. There's lots and lots of holster options now for women that I think is really cool. But so like Filster right now, they have the Enigma holster. That's a big one that a lot of people like, especially joggers and things like that. And then yeah, so that's kind of neat. I'm getting ready to go to this, it's called the Combative Summit. I don't know if you've heard of that. So there's like a lot of people that are, it's in Auburndale, Florida.
Yeah.
And there's like all these different guys are going to be there. It's like 3 days of just workshop after workshop after workshop.
That's where I wish I was living in the US, you know, because you got some really cool people over there, and like just the thought of having all these guys in one place, it's like
I'm really excited about going.
I bet
so I get to go to that. But the guy that does the Filster holsters, he's going to be there as well and do a lot of stuff under consent. So I'm very interested to hear what he has to say in that regard, because so that's kind of neat. And the pistol part is not really like my wheelhouse. I like guns and I like to shoot and all of that stuff. I don't necessarily I would teach somebody like CCW or something like that for concealed carry course on a basic level, but I'm not ever interested in being like a firearms instructor. It's not, I just don't want to. So, but I love to shoot. I am into black powder, like antique black powder guns. Yeah. So those are kind of fun. That's like totally not related necessarily. But it's neat. I think they're cool. So I get, I'm getting ready to do a video on I have a Kentucky musket that's kind of fun. So.
The old school one that you put
this sucker is so heavy. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It is just ridiculous. So yeah. I did one on the Philadelphia Derringer a couple years ago. It was a lot of fun. And that's the gun that John Wilkes Booth used to shoot Abraham Lincoln. And it was a joke video. I did it like a little bit of history, and then I called it like my tactical black powder pistol program, hit me with your only shot. And I think things are funny. I mean, I handle a lot of this stuff with humor, because I feel like I had a person ask me like, what do you look for in a good gym? Because I travel and train with and one of the things I look for is humor. Like, are they laughing? Is there, because at the end of the day, if you're a person that is just stupid serious all the time, then I think that you're going to miss, because with firearms and with knives, okay? Actually, just with firearms, because knives have other purposes, okay? A gun is the intent. It is a tool meant to kill something. That's it. So if you aren't, I don't know, you have to have a good time. I don't want to say like have a good time, because there is a serious element. You need to be very serious about like what the 4 things and the 4 rules of handling firearm. But at the same time, like, you got to lighten up. Like, there has to be like some sort of, it's just even with men and like, or just people and like going through hard stuff, like, in foster care and stuff like that, there were jokes that we would make, and it's just, that's what you had to do in order to get through. And I think there's the psychological aspect of dealing with those things. In MMA, it's the same thing. Like, you can sit there, you can push, and you can be, someone can be yelling at you and you need to be pushed. It's a fighting sport. And then sometimes you need to have a joke cracked. So
I think you're right, and that's one thing that attracted me to, towards your videos. It's your humor. I think, it's good to have that personality where, people can relate to you. People are like, oh, that person is nice. She knows what she's talking about, and, she doesn't mind having a laugh. So I think that's very important as well. You're gonna love Richard Dimitri. You're gonna absolutely love these guys because they're always clowning around as well. So I think, in terms of kind of making yourself available to people, and not scaring people away, because
Right.
you get like combative instructors out there that are very serious, very
Yes.
and it's you're like, some people might not want to go and see them because they're afraid to speak to them,
Right.
because so I think you're right, that's like a very important element, to be able to be relatable, so that people are like, oh, I can relate to that person seems nice, I can learn from that person, and we can have a laugh, we can learn some serious stuff, and at the same time we can have a break and have a laugh and
Right.
go back to the serious stuff.
And
Yeah.
it's like what you said. It's like it goes back to priorities. If you're a teacher,
Mm,
what are you trying to teach? Okay, so if you're trying to teach self-defense, then it's for the people that need it most. Those are the ones that are going to be the most intimidated to walk in.
that's it.
So they need to know this. If you're an MMA gym and your goal is to crank out the next world champion, then awesome. That's not a bad goal.
Mm,
But there's that focus. Don't be sitting here saying that the first goal here is self-defense, especially towards women, because they're going to be walking in and they're going to look in this gym and they're going to be like, kidding me? Like, or they're not going to go at all. Sometimes just even calling to ask about a class takes every ounce of courage that they have. And people, like I have women all like several times where I get at the end of my course and we have a debrief and they're like, I almost didn't come today.
mm,
And I'm like, oh man, and so I'm constantly wanting to think about ways where it's just like, hey, I want you here. This isn't going to be like a giant beatdown. I'm not going to be screaming at you. I'm not going to be kicking at
mm,
you, like holding, like, I don't think people, I think we get into this world and we forget how scary it was just to hold pads for the first time. Like everybody
mm,
forgets, like when you're holding them and you're out here because you know that you don't want to get hit in the face, so you're like, oh no, bring him back here, buddy. It's, we forget, and it's like you have to go back to just how intimidating it is and
mm.
meet people where they're at, and that's where I want to be. I want to bridge that gap and
Yeah,
get the people that need it most. So yeah.
that's good. What you just said now is a gap, is something that I got into like more recently, because like the my mentality for a long time was like hardcore mentality of just trying to fuck people up, basically. Do you know what
Right.
I mean? And I still like that aspect. To me, fighting is fighting. If you learn to
Yeah.
fight, you just learn to access the a crazy amount of violence, a crazy amount of aggression, and that these has got its place in combative training.
Correct.
But I realized that this type of training only attracts a certain type of people,
Yes.
and it's attracting the big tattooed alpha male, bold short hair with tattoos and combat trousers and shorts, and that's it. But what about the people that really need that stuff? The people that are scared, the people that are traumatized, people that have been sexually abused, people that have been
Right.
abused by their partners for years and years, people that have been abused by their family member, or people that are afraid to fight, people that don't think that they got it within them to fight. How do we help those people? And that's where I had to rethink it all. I had to go, right, I don't want to be that angry looking person anymore. I've had
Right.
some anger issues. I'm the first one to raise my hand up and go, I used to go mental when I was younger. But now it's like, okay, I want to be that person that people think, oh, do you know what? I want to learn with that guy because that guy looks nice, that guy can have a laugh, and that guy truly understands me. Do you know what I mean? And
Right.
that's where I think it boils down to, as a self-protection instructor. The main ingredient that a lot of people don't even think about. Everybody will say, oh, you need to be physically fit. Yeah, that's true. You need to be explosive and know how to fight. That's true too. But you need to know how to teach and how to convey the message, and that's true as well. But that's not the most important thing in order to be a good self-protection instructor. I think the most important thing is empathy. You know,
Hmm.
it,
Where
it,
they,
it,
and also their time, understanding their timing. Like
mm,
your job, if you are going to be a self-defense instructor, is to meet a person where they're at. the majority of people are not going to extend past a self-defense course. Okay.
Yeah.
So your job is to, one, not give them a false sense of security. It is to push them farther up the hill in some capacity. Okay. And two, to give them the most amount of effective information in the shortest amount of time possible.
Yeah.
And that's the part that I think that everybody's missing the boat is they want to put so much here. And it's like, wait, let's focus on this. And it always, again, it's always back down to foundations. And everything comes back to where you are at the beginning. Like, okay, we've got to back this up and start here. Okay. And that's what I find is very interesting is everything builds on it. Even people in this industry, you start to realize like if there's a connection somewhere, the person has learned under this person or something like that. There's always some sort of like connect and build. And yeah,
So here I got a question for you. Did you ever have to use your skill set in real life? Did you ever have to fight someone, shoot someone, stab someone? If you
I have not
don't have
fought.
to reply that if you don't want
I
to.
have not shot. I haven't shot anybody.
Yeah.
I shot Craig Douglas in the ear with a sim round.
Did you?
Pierced his ear. Anyway, no, I have had to use the psychological aspects. I've drawn my knife on someone. The de-escalation one, yeah, that was a big one. I've definitely used that a couple of times. And then, no, yeah, I think it's more or less, and I think that's where the bigger part comes into play. You look at like medical and how do you handle yourself in crisis? You know, it's not necessarily the fight. It's going to be like after a car accident or, you know, getting lost on a trail or things like this, you know? So yeah, I've used all aspects of my training, like it bleeds into my life on a grand scale. So yeah, it's just a weird, yeah.
So what is that all you do for a living? Do you actually do that for a living, full time, teaching?
No.
What else
I'm
do
a
you do?
mom.
Yeah, but that's a full-time job as it is. Yeah, yeah. And I've seen you got quite a few as well.
Got a little bit of kids. I got a herd.
Nice. That's awesome. So I tell you what, just let's gravitate a bit more. If you got a bit more time, have you got a bit more time, or do you need to go?
I do. I have to go to the bathroom like nobody's business. I know we're live, so
You can if you want. Let's take if you want to take like a advert break, publicity break.
Let's take a publicity break.
Yeah, go on.
All right, 2 seconds.
No problem. See you in a bit.
Okay. We were going on like 2 hours and I drank so much coffee before. I can go another 2 hours now. We're good.
Yeah. So do you know what I was thinking? I was thinking about gravitating a bit towards personal development and things like that.
Development, yeah.
Yeah, which is, you know, something I'm definitely into as well. You know, anything that kind of puts me in that direction, you know, to kind of find ways to become a better version of myself, and ultimately kind of help my students do the same, which I think, as self-protection instructors, that's also something that we should be striving to do. The
Right.
most important thing. So, do you actually do any sort of? We spoke about breath work, yeah. So, what type of breath work do you do? Have you looked into the Wim Hof breath
Yeah.
work, the holotropic breath work, and things like that?
So I mean, I don't go like that far into. I've done like a couple ice baths. Aaron Janetti
Mm.
kind of talked me into that. It's definitely not my thing.
Yeah.
I do not like to be cold at
No.
all. I'm sure there's some, obviously there's like all 10 kinds of like benefits and things like that.
Mm.
For me, okay, betterment. Okay, well, I read a lot. That's a big one. But I personally always put myself in uncomfortable situations to make sure that I can to get out of my comfort zone and make sure that I'm like,
Yeah.
testing what
Mhm.
so I think like usually about once a month, once every 2 months, I'm doing some sort of like weekend combatives course
Mm.
somewhere. I'm usually the smallest person most of the time. That's uncomfortable. And then I belong to TCB MMA here
Mhm.
in Rogers, Arkansas. So I'm in there a couple, 3 times a week. And that's fun. I like the people there. So it's kind of like mom, but yeah, I don't really know.
That's good. That's good. That's the most important thing. Can I like have a nice group of people like that you can train with and grow with?
Mhm.
Sometimes it's like you go to certain gyms, and I've experienced that in the world of MMA. I love MMA as well. I love my striking, grappling, and stuff. I should do a bit more grappling. I've been doing some. I need to film some. I've not filmed a lot of it, but I will. I will get to that. But it's kind of finding a good gym where there is no ego and where people kind of help you bring you
Right.
up. As I've been in a lot of gyms where there's a lot of ego and there is that type of hierarchy in there, and if you're not part of the top dogs of that hierarchy, then you're not even being looked at, and you're you're not allowed to go and it's not that you're not allowed, but you're going to go and try and talk to certain people and they'll just walk away. Do you know what I mean? They'll just, and it's a bit shit, but there is a really good gym around where I am, who's owned by one of my best friend, Panikos Yusuf, who is a 3-time world champion in Thai boxing. So he used to fight in one championships.
Mm-mm.
So there is UFC, which is the big money thing, and then there is one championships. And
Okay.
I'll be honest with you, there is more talent in one championships. I'd rather watch one championships than UFC. There's so much more raw talent in one championships. Uh, and so Panikos used to fight there, and used to go to Thailand, and so one of the top fighters in the world. Very very nice guy, very kind-hearted, very humble, very very humble guy. He's the type of guy that he'll be at the back of the room, you won't even hear him, you won't even know he's there, but he's probably the most dangerous guy in the room. Do you know what I mean? So yeah. And so this place, All Powers Gym, is like, when I go and train there, when you got the guys that are better, so that there's quite a few professional fighters that train there, people that do that for a living, and they look at you, and when you struggle with something, they come and see you, and they go like,
Right.
right, you know what? So that's what you're doing here. Okay, it's cool, but there is that other thing that you could do here, and that would make your game a bit better. And the students, they're coming around and they're helping you, And I think once you find a place like this, it's gold. It's a place where you start to. It's almost like a family. Like All Powers Gym is like my office. It's my second home. So I know when I go there and I'm struggling with something, people are going to be coming and help me. And guess what? When I see people struggling, I'm going to do the same. It's like there's always people better than you, and there's always people that are not as good as you. So when you see people that are struggling, you go and help them, and then
Right.
it's kind of everyone is pulling everyone up. So I like that sort of mentality in a place, you know.
I just it was funny you said that because I just did a video on fighters in how kids are watching them.
Mm.
And it was about, because my kids, we get in the car after class or something like that, and then they're telling me about their teacher who's, one of our MMA fighters, or they're telling me about so and so said this to me, or and my kids are pretty well known, especially my girls, for trash talking because their mom does too. So so I mean, it was funny the first time I remember bringing them. I'd known a couple of the jujitsu guys, and one of them was just like, "Oh my gosh, those are your daughters!" Like, holy cow! Because we just try, we laugh and we joke and we have a good time, and my kids are not shy at all. But it was neat because I did the video on how important it is that they are watching you and they are seeing the things and they notice if you give them a high five. That's what they're talking about to me in the car later.
Mm.
And that matters when you take that time out. At TCB, we have we have a 5 o'clock class. We have a 6 o'clock class. You have to be asked to go to the 6 o'clock class. That's the
Mhm.
advanced boxing class, right?
Right.
That being said, a lot of the people that are already in advanced can go to the 5 o'clock class, and Aaron will point them out, and he's like, and he pairs them with the people that are all the beginner people. And because he's like, these are the people that are going to help you. And that helps bring the fighters, the team up,
Mhm.
and then they get asked and they go, with improvement and things like that. And also, it's not a bad thing if this is where you want to stay. If you're there and your goal is for fitness and you just want to do the boxing part of it, then great. That's not, nobody's going to like knock you for it. Nobody cares.
Mm.
But if you're going to go and you want to be a fighter, then you're going to have to bust ass and learn everything you can in this one to be asked to the other one.
Yeah.
But I like that I like how that's handled, because now you get more of the foundations. This is very important.
Mhm.
And there are people here. There's a bunch of very knowledgeable people that can help you out with that. And I think that's really cool. And they're nice. Like, people
Mm.
are nice. I mean, they know when to push you too. Like, there's been a few
Mhm.
times where, but yeah, so it's good. But yeah, I agree with you.
So do you know what? There's something I wanted to ask you in terms of what you teach, like the healthy buffalo. It's not all about self protection, is it?
No,
It's more about kind of personal development and also encompassing self protection. Is that
right.
right? So where you going with all this? Is it just a passion, something that you do for just to spend your time, or is it something that you're really looking to kind of push forward, push upward?
Both. So one of the things I talk about, especially in terms of like when I was dealing with in foster care, you have abusive kids are coming out of abuse,
Mm.
learning where to draw boundaries. Okay. One of my biggest things in terms of, you had asked about personal development, and I have that tattooed on my arm, is the elephant, and it has a bite out of its ear. And it's like, how do you eat an elephant? Well, one bite at a time. And I think a lot of times with growth is people want to make these grand plans of like, I'm going to do this on Monday and I'm going to tackle it all. And then they fail because it's so much at one point. And I think that when people start setting goals back to where they're small, manageable goals, well, I'm going to do this week, and then I'm going to stack this on next week, and I'm going to keep doing this. Sometimes you don't want to do anything, and sometimes it's all you can do to just put a little on Rand, And so everything has to be, and this is where you get when you deal with women in like domestic violence situations, and
Right.
men. Okay, I
Yeah.
I have kind of maneuvered into dealing with men in domestic violence situations,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and what's interesting is like, okay, so you always hear this, and this one frustrates me so much. Why doesn't she just leave? And
Mhm.
it's just like, no, she can't. There's so many things. You've got the psychological factor of she doesn't think she deserves more.
Yeah.
Well, I got myself into this in the first place. So, or what if she has children?
Mm.
A mom that has kids, if there's a chance that the abuser is going to have her children for 50% of the time, or even every other weekend, who cares? Okay. She's not going to allow that person to have that alone time with her cubs. That's just a fact. Okay. She wants to protect her babies. So she'll stay here in the line of fire to protect her babies. Okay. So it's not simple. So how do you deal with this? How do you, it goes back to, you know, how do I get people in the door? How do I get them to even understand that they need this in the first place? Okay, well, if you're coming into my class, okay, well, the first thing is you need to recognize that you need it. Okay, cool. Sometimes getting people over their fear, like I have women where they're getting ready to do the power slap and they're shaking. Okay, that's how, you know, there is so much. You look at the stats, you've got a 1 in 3 chance that women have been sexually abused, okay, in my class. So if I'm sitting in a room, you know, of 15 women, it's a large chunk that we're dealing, and we're already unpacking trauma. So we have to work through that. So it's like, how do you do this? Well, we do it one. How do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. And so it's like picking small goals, quit picking such large things. I was reading an article was talking about when they teach military how to deal with waterboarding. Okay. The goal is not to live when you're being waterboarded to the next day. The goal is living to the next breath. So sometimes we just need to break things down to manageable
tasks,
bites and stuff like that. So it's like, even with, you know, foster care and abusive situations and things like this, how do we, I could go on with that one a lot.
No, that's a good topic, most definitely. You know, people have got difficulties. You know, people kind of try to take too much on too soon, and that's been one of my problems for many years. In fact, I tell you what, recently I really started to go, right, Julien, let's observe your life and the tasks, the things that you've been trying to do in life, especially the things that kept I'm not going to say fail, because there's no failure, there's only feedback. The only failure is when you give up. Yeah, and I never give up. So it's like, okay, let's have a look at the things that, you know, kept kind of, almost I thought I was failing, but no, because I got back to it. But why? Because I was taking too much on too soon. My workload was too big, and I wanted to do this, and this and this and that, and I wanted to do so many things, and trying to do everything at the same time, and you know, and it just crumbles. You know, everything crumbles, because it's like the best thing right now, and that's where I'm taking, since last year I've been taking some steps. I've been taking a completely different approach to it now, which is, let's divide my goal, my objective. Let's divide it into manageable tasks. You know, bite-sized chunk that I like. You see, like eating the elephant. You know, that's so. And so now I'm like, okay, so smaller tasks, okay, and the goal is to do it on the long run now. So it's not to do as much as I can anymore. It's not quantity, but it's more like quality, and doing it on the long run. You know, so I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna do this little thing, but I'm gonna do this for a whole year, and I'm gonna look back in a year time and go, okay, I've been able to do this thing for a whole year. Now let's bit more. You know, it's like at the gym. It's like at the gym. So I'm going to the gym. I'm working with a certain weight, and I mean, some guys out there are working with crazy weights. I don't even want to watch that. You know what I mean? But let's say I'm working with a certain type of weight, yeah, and I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna go crazy. I'm not gonna put too much more weight on. I'm just gonna make sure that I'm keeping with that routine for a whole year, and then 2 years, and then 3 years, and then once I can do it for like 6 months to a year, then I'll add a bit more weight, which I already have started to do. But you know, that's really all about breaking things down into manageable tasks, and it's thing that people need to learn to do more, because a lot of people give up on their dreams, give up on what they want to do, just because they can't do it, because they give themselves too much work in too little time. You know.
Well, and also it's like what you hit on too is like, do you have a strong foundation? Like, if you have a good strong foundation, then everything else will come it will naturally come and flow better.
Yeah.
So once you start, it's like basics in boxing. Like, I mean, how many times do you come back and it's what what do they call them? Training scars and things like that, where you have to come back and fix something
Yeah.
because they've done, and that's where I like, there's my friend Scotty owns a jiu-jitsu gym in, it's Virginia Beach Jiu-Jitsu. And he has a white belt class, and they are in that class for jiu-jitsu, and they are learning all of this stuff at the beginning. And it's not the pressure of being with all the other upper white belts or upper belts. Okay. It's the pressure of just, here are the basics. And I remember like thinking that is the most practical thing. Because when I first started jiu-jitsu, you're just kind of thrown in, and then you're just supposed to roll. And it's like, what am I rolling? What am I even doing? Like, you're not even giving me an objective. It's like, oh, you're supposed to roll. And it's like, well, I'm in a limp noodle because I don't have a goal. Because you don't have anything in your toolbox.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I remember like, okay, and it's like back to foundations, that I really appreciated that way of handling it. And then, yeah, I'm a huge fan of that. But yeah, it is like making sure that you have like, how's your framework, all that stuff. Yeah.
What's your thought on like a game plan? Like having a game plan, whether be it a game plan in life or a game plan in your self protection. It's kind of having this rehearsed game plan in your head, so that you know that if something happens, boom, this is what I'm doing. I'm not left wondering what I'm gonna do and how I'm gonna do it. I already know. So
goal planning and setting. I'm a huge goal setter for sure. I'll write them down. Now, that doesn't mean they're always going to come. Like sometimes, like I'm also very open to the way things are just supposed to maneuver. Sometimes goals change and things change. Like you asked about where the direction of Healthy Buffalo is going to go. I love to teach, but the goal is, again, to make people safer. So it's like, how best can I do this? Like, and that's where things are going to go. Being able to offer this more online was the bigger goal right now. Okay. And then less travel. My number one priority is to be a mom. Okay. Yeah. And so that's going to come first. And if that kind of extensive travel is going to take away from that, I'm not, so how do I maneuver both of these and also, finagle through? So that's where it's supposed to go. And then also like resources. That's the best thing. It's like, I don't have all the answers at all. Like, so how best can I help people? Well, that's pointing them in the right direction. And so that's why I don't have like, I go and I'll try out these things. And I have a page that's dedicated strictly to safe people that I've trained with, all across the United States. And if your gym is not listed on there and I've trained at your gym, then I don't consider you a safe place to train, for women. And so like all of these different people. So here's this resource. Hey, if you're in this area, these are the awesome people that you can go check out. NIDES, what kind of, reviews and things like that. How best to use them, stuff like that. So that's kind of the goal. Seems very vague, but yeah, but I do write down my goals, personal and like business stuff. Okay. Once a year. Sometimes I hit them, sometimes I don't. I don't really beat myself up too much.
Can you see that board here?
Yeah.
Well, there's two. There's one with affirmations, but the bigger one. These are all my that I call it my manifestation board. Every year I make a board like this, and I write my main goals of what I want to achieve with this that year. And like you say, some stuff I some stuff I reach it, some stuff I don't. I have to report it to the next year. But in the last couple of years, I've actually manifested quite a lot of things. So I'm happy. It's kind of feeling like it's my time. But in terms of what you were saying that you wanted to make your teaching available online. Yeah. Have you given some thoughts to how you're going to do it? And because that's something I'm doing at the moment as well. I think it's the way to go now. Obviously, it will never replace physical training, but it could most certainly help certain people. Do you know what I mean? So I did a course not too long ago with someone called Matthew Chapman. that I could probably also put you in touch with him if you want. He's very, very clued up, and that's what he does. He teaches people to set their online courses, and the man's made £1 million selling online courses, so he knows his shit. Just put it that way. I did a two day seminar with him last not this weekend, the weekend before, and I've learned a lot of stuff. So yeah, got that kind of. I'm thinking about marketing now.
My thing is what's been a struggle, and Marlene probably hates me right now. So I have somebody that's going to do them for me. I just actually have to do it.
Film them. You need to film them. Yeah.
Well, and what's funny, okay, so this is where my struggle hit. And so this is where, you get into your, like, you have your lines of like physical goals that you need to do, manifestations or whatever. This has been mine. I went, and one day I was all set up. Like, I have a buddy's house that was really beautiful. And I was like, I'm going to go sit in there, and I'm going to take my course, and I'm just going to speak to the camera as if I speak to my class.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, it was like me just going, and then I realized very quickly that I have to go about this a completely different manner. And so now I have to do it the way I do my other online videos. Mm-hmm. And that's been the bigger thing. So like I said, Marlene probably hates me right now. Sorry. Because she's been waiting on me to get stuff done. And so I need to light a fire. You're basically, every time I turn around, I'm feeling guilty. But yeah, so it's been I need to sit down. It's a write it out sort of thing, and make sure it's done right. I mean, there's a lot of material that needs to be sorted and put. And it's also different too, when you're teaching live students, you're getting a feel for the energy of the people in the room. So there's things that you might say that you might leave out. Because there's a much more important thing that we need to do here. Yeah. And so that's a struggle, because when it's just a camera, it's just you. And so it's like, okay, it's less emotional. I know it sounds terrible, but I got to get my battery here in a minute. It's less emotional, but I can get out a lot more information too. So it's like, so that's been a struggle. So yeah, that was actually on my list of things to do today, was to be.
I know exactly what you mean. You're talking to somebody who I used to suffer from a lot of social anxiety when I was younger, and I had to teach myself to speak in front of the camera. I am absolutely, completely, 100%.
It's weird. It is so weird. Like, yeah.
Well, do you know what? The first time when I tried it, I couldn't put a sentence together. I was like, I started to film it, messed up, and I was like, fuck. And me, I'm a perfectionist. Like, if I don't get things perfect the way that I know when I hit my genius state. So when I hit my genius state, I can do some amazing work. I'm charismatic. I'm this. I'm everything is cool. But when I don't reach, when I know that I don't have these, it depends of my mind frame in the day. It depends on my mood. Some days I'm gonna be right. Let's put the camera on. Let's film. And I won't even have to stop the camera even once. I'll speak for like 2 hours in a row without a single mistake. I didn't stutter. I didn't, everything is fine. And then some other days I'm like, I can't even put two sentences together. You know what I mean? So
I think it's also learning to ride when it comes. Like,
yeah.
It is like, I will be driving in the car and it's just like, boom, I got to say something into my phone or I'll forget it. And if I don't, that's that, I'll remember it. No, you won't. No. And it's also like, there'll be times where it's like, you have periods of creativity of when this is going to like flow. And I'll go with it. It's just like, okay, well, I guess today's the day. And this is what we're going to do. I think that's the problem with this project, is it's just looming over my head. And I'm just like, I have to do it. And I'm like, and it seems so daunting. And it needs to be hey, my phone's going to die. Give me 2 seconds here.
Okay.
I'm gonna. Let's see here. It's not going to be as bright right now because I just had to unplug my ring light.
Okay.
There we go. Okay, there we go. So yeah, it is definitely one of those yeah. So need to light a fire under that.
Yeah, I got the same thing right now. I'm like, I need to create more content. I need to just check it out.
You get a green screen.
I got a massive green screen in my room. It's been up for like the last 3 months, and I don't intend to take it down because I got so much things to film, and know, I just need to put my camera on my tripod and just start filming. That's all I need to do. I got everything I need, but I'm putting ideas down now, and it's gonna eventually at some point it's gonna come out. But
Right.
it's kind of the discipline, the self-discipline. It's like, yeah, it can be difficult sometimes. Like you telling
Yeah.
me that's what I want to do. I need to do it. But sometimes if you got the right motivation, it's like I've launched my website. When was that? 2 weeks ago now. After working a long time on it. I mean, we spent a year on it with my mate, but it's nice. It's really, really nice. We made it well worth it. And just the fact that I did actually sell some of my old courses on the first week. So that kind of motivated me. That motivated me to go, right. You need to
Right.
film some more now. You need to start, just focus on
Well,
that.
being around people too, that's my friend Sophia. So her and I try and meet like once every 2 weeks for coffee. She has she's more of the social media influencer type, but she has like a gun, basically self-defense sort of thing. Her name's Fit for Fia on Instagram. And she's
Fit for?
just huh?
Fit for what?
Fit for Fia.
For fear.
For Fia, yeah.
Okay.
And her name's Sophia Espina, and she's just great. She's super sweet, a lot of fun. But her and I were just discussing like how much more just going, and sometimes we'll just go have coffee and we're bouncing ideas off of each other, and we're doing in two totally different, kind of like directions in some ways. But it is that helps creatively, like also holding you accountable to like we'll be meeting tomorrow to do some filming or something, helping each other out, but that helps with the creativity of that part
Yeah.
too, are you getting this done, so
It's good to have a friend like that. The guy that did my website is my close friend as well, and we're like that type of friends. Like every now and then. Well, I mean, pretty much every week we'll ring each other and how you doing? Yeah, yeah, I'm doing okay. Okay, this, yeah, I did this, I did that, and then some other time it's like, how you doing? Ah, shit. You know what I mean? And then it's like,
sucks.
yeah, and so
Yeah.
then we're in this constant dynamic of either I'm the one cheering him up, and
Right.
just send him like motivations and stuff, or I'm the one that feels like shit and he's the one motivating me. Do you know what I mean? So it's good to have people that are on the same wavelength, that think like you, and people that are creative and constructive, people that are that got the same type of drive of
Right.
let's get shit done. Do you know what I mean? Let's become millionaires. Let's get that business off the ground. Let's work on your marketing. Let's work on this. Let's work on that.
Right.
So it's say that there's that old saying, show me who you live with and I'll tell you who you are.
No, and that's exactly it too. As a person, if they understand what you're trying to do, they're going to have feedback that's going to be very valuable. Like Sophia will, like, in the terms of like videos and stuff like that, she's brilliant. Like this, she has just and so she can be like, hey, you should try this. And she always has like, but then it's also just like, again, it just starts, you can bounce ideas off of each other. And it's really helpful. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of that. So yeah, but yeah, it's who you're around for sure.
Do you have you ever done any Tai Chi or any Qigong or anything like that? No?
No, I just pray.
Pray? Okay, yeah, yeah. Are you religious?
I
Yeah.
am, yes, very much. So,
Okay, yeah. What, like the church?
I'm Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, was what got us through being a foster parent and seeing a lot of things, and I know God drugged me kicking and screaming through a lot of that, and I am extremely grateful to this day that he, you know, still made us do that. You know what I mean? Like, because I wouldn't have my babies. Like, that's a lot of things. Like, I think people get to put it this way. I hear that all the time because I adopted 9 kids, right? And I hear this a lot of the time. We're like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. And it's like, no, it really wasn't. Like, I wanted to be a mom, and that was how I became a mom. There was so many times that we wanted to quit. And there was so many times that God was like, it's not your time to quit yet. And it's not your time. And I look back now and it's like, I would not have my last 4 kids if we would have quit when I wanted to. And so that's the other part. That's the piece on my arm, is that there's the hammer and the nail. And it's from a song that says, my dreams are not the issue here, for thee the hammer holds. And it's just talking about how my plans, and that's why I'm very big on going with the punches. Like, my older daughters will laugh because they'll say, like, my little mantra is like, oh, this is what we're doing now. And it's basically like, I'm pretty good at just being like, oh, okay, well, this is the direction, I guess, that things get changed, and I just roll with it. I don't have to stick with it. I'm very open to what will grow, and what life throws at you, you know, because you never know. Like, all these people, you know, if I got my plan that I thought I wanted when I was like, you know, 22 to 25, like, I wouldn't have any of this, and I wouldn't be, you know, a lot of people would look at me like, 9 kids, oh my gosh. And I'm like, I can't imagine anything without them. Like, they are everything, you know. And so I am just eternally grateful that it wasn't on me, you know. So yeah. In the same way with like Healthy Buffalo, like, I can tell you, it feel like so many different times, and even now still, it's just like life will throw things at you, and it's like, I know God's telling me, like, you're not done. And so it's like, and how many times too he's put people in my life that where I was at my last, like, I just can't do this anymore. And then I'll just have a conversation with somebody, and then, or somebody will send me a note and they'll be like, hey, this is what I learned at your class, and this, you know, I use this. And I'm like, oh, that's, and then it all goes back to the starfish story, which is also tattooed on my arm. And it's like, you know, what difference can you possibly make? And it's like, it doesn't matter if you make a difference to one, then it's worth it. So
it's true. You know, it's so rewarding. It's so rewarding to get like these emails or these letters or these phone calls from some of your students to tell you what you've shown me like saved me, or you know, or I used what you've shown me. And I've had that a few times, and it's like, that's when you know you've made a difference. Do you know what I
yeah.
mean? That's the most rewarding stuff as an instructor, is to actually get the proof that you actually changed the life, you actually helped
Right.
someone. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where you just look back and you're like, oh, okay, there it was. You know, here I was over here trying to quit, or thinking that maybe I don't know enough or something like that. And it was like, nope, keep going, keep moving forward.
We're all learning, you know. There is a saying that goes, sometimes a teacher, always a student, you know.
Yes.
And it's like, yeah, that's the truth, you know. You're always learning something. And the thing is that you even learn from your students, you know. You
Oh
learn
yeah.
so much from your students. Actually, is the best way to adapt your training. You adapt your training in function of your students, so you're learning from your students all the time.
Oh yeah. I'm a
Yeah.
homeschool mom, and I learn stuff from my kids all the time, where I'm like,
Do you homeschool them? Yeah.
I do. I do.
Wow. I
Oh.
bet that's a massive job. How do you do that? So do you do math? You do math and
We do math, we do reading. So my ex-husband takes part of the math part. I do the reading and writing and all that fun
yeah.
stuff. I mean, then they go back and forth, you know, and all that. But it's I mean, then there's life, you know. Everything's a homeschool lesson when you're
So do they learn about history as well and stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, well, when we travel and stuff too, there's, you know, you'll just stop and be like, oh, well, there's this, you know, throw books at them. We're all just brainwashing our kids. It just depends on which way you want to do it.
Absolutely. You know what you just said now. It's like the how do you call that? The educational system is I call it the indoctrination system. It's like they're teaching our kids not how to think, but what to think, and that's the problem.
That's yes. So like that's a big, huge. So reading is a big one. If your kid is a strong reader and then they like to read,
Mm.
then they'll be able to teach themselves. And also,
Yeah.
exactly like how do you think for yourself? It's not just because of this. It's like go out and how do you learn? That's the biggest thing. So like I feel like as a homeschool mom, my biggest thing is to teach them how to learn. And so yeah.
Mm. No, that's brilliant. I used to hate school. I absolutely
Me
hated
too.
school. I was like, it's already like if I knew back then that it was most of it is bullshit. It's just like, okay, math. Okay, it's important to learn certain things,
Right.
but a lot of stuff that you're taught in school is like it's. First of all, I don't believe in history. Generally, is his story. Yeah, and not the what really happened.
Right.
So yeah, yeah. No, that's cool. That's really cool. Home teaching, homeschooling 9 kids. Wow.
No. So my older two daughters are married.
Yeah. Oh, are
So
they? Okay.
they're married. We adopted them when they were 14 and 15.
Okay.
So yeah, they're married. They're like 28 and 30 now. So they
Mm-hmm.
have 3 kids of their own. I'm a grandma.
Mm.
So yeah. So just a 7.
Yeah. Just a
Yeah.
just a 7. Like if that was not enough.
Like you ever seen World War Z where the
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Lord of the Flies? Yeah,
Uh,
it's my
you
life.
you like zombie movies?
Just that one.
Yeah. What about The Walking Dead?
No.
Ah, that was brilliant. That.
I liked World War Z because I liked the almost like the social aspect of it to see what people do in crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I
Yeah.
thought they did really well with that, and I think that was very interesting. And Brad Pitt's not bad to look at, so
Yeah. If you like to see what people are doing in terms of in crisis situation, then The Walking Dead is probably the best thing to watch. Like it's just showing the nature of human beings. Like, you know, if you were in that type of situation, I've been imagining myself, what would I do if we were getting into some sort of zombie apocalypse, scenario? And one part of me would be like, "Way, I get to use my sword and I get to fucking do all that stuff." But then there's another part that's like, "Shit, you know, how would we survive?" And so if you look at the series like The Walking Dead, it's like you realize that the zombies are not the only thing. They're not even the worst thing. The worst thing is man. It's like we would rob each other, we would kill each other for food and resources and weapons and hiding places, and it's just mad. It's
yeah,
absolutely madness what it would be.
human nature is pretty ugly.
Yeah.
I always think it's like, oh, I wish I could do this, and it's just like, no, I don't think you really do. I can do it if I have to. It's like you have these. It's funny because you have like survival classes and stuff like that. They're like, you want to go do this, and I'm like, I mean, I'm gonna go learn it for 3 days, but that is not a lifestyle I want to
Mm.
live. Like,
Yeah.
I like my air conditioning and heater. I
Yeah.
really like clean water,
Hmm.
and I like a bathtub. So I will rough it to learn, but it's not a
Imagine, bro.
lifestyle I'm going to live.
Yeah, yeah. So you don't like camping then, no?
I don't mind camping. It's when we built our house, we homesteaded it. So like I lived in a tent with like 5 kids. And while we were working on it and building it for
Mm.
almost, like 8 months. And it was fine. Like I took solar showers off the back, porch. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful home now, but it was a lot of work. And I remember like later on, we had the house done. It's beautiful and everything's nice. And I had a friend invite me over and she's like, hey, do you guys want to come over for a bonfire? And I was like,
Mm.
yeah, if like your bonfire means like we're going to use your kitchen and like your oven and we're going to sit inside in the air conditioner, then Yeah, that's the kind of bonfire I'm looking for. I think it took me like a year and a half before I was like willing to do any cookouts again.
Yeah.
So I'll rough it if I have to. I'm just saying, like.
So, did you have any moment of epiphany, any big shift in your life, anything that happened to you that kind of really made you rethink all your life, from that made you change completely in the space of a day?
Yes. Well, I don't know if it. Okay. Yeah. So when I was I have a 13-year-old son now, and I've had him since he was 2 days old. He was my babies are all, we've had to do detoxing with them because they were drug babies and stuff like that. And so we had him, and he was the youngest sibling of the 3 older kids that we'd already adopted at the time. And so it was very much assumed that situation was never going to get better. There was a lot more to that story. There's older children too. So like that situation of where they were coming from was never going to get better. So the understood assumption was that he would be adopted by us eventually. And so at the time, my ex-husband and I were moving to Washington State, and we had all this stuff figured out and everything like that. And everything was on track. And we had gone to a court date, and he was 4 months old at the time. And we'd gone to a court date, and the paperwork got messed up. And we had already sold our house, and we had to leave. And I had to go and give my baby back to the state office because he wasn't allowed to go with us. And so I drove away with my kids and his siblings, and didn't know if I was ever going to see my 4-month-old again. And I think that mentality, it was very weird because there's 2 things that happened. One, I understood very, very clearly that getting mad over petty shit isn't important. Okay. And then 2, there was a peace. Like, I was very much given a peace with God of like, you don't have control over this situation, And that was a very weird thing because I've never been more devastated in my life. Like, every year this memory comes up of he was gone for 4 months. And every year that memory comes up, and I'm like, but anyway, we were able to get him back, and the paperwork went through, and then we were able to adopt him. But yeah, it was one of those of you don't have control. Okay. So you can you're in charge of your reaction to what is going to happen. And you can prepare as best you can for that. Right. But that doesn't mean that you can actually control ultimately what's going to happen. You're going to have to just go with it. And choosing how you grow back from something too. So that's a big one. It's just kind of like the concept where I was telling you, I got in the car accident. I have, first aid kits and everything in my car, right? One of the things that came about from understanding that, like, I am prepared. I have these things. I've trained for this type of stuff. My car was on a busy highway, and it was pouring down rain. By the time it wasn't safe to be near my car, right? Yeah. So other people could have very much got hurt, and I'm sitting here going, well, I have tourniquets and I have all this stuff in my car. I can't get to my car. So sometimes you may be as prepared as possible. You may not even be able to get to that.
Yeah.
And so I think ultimately at the end of the day, I think that was one of the biggest things, is understanding you do not have control. You can just react to the best of what you have. And so I don't know if that's what you were looking for, but
no. It's anything that kind of shift your perspective, shift your understanding of what life is, what the universe is, and how you interact with that. I think it is a moment of epiphany. I think that, like you say, the situation very often cannot be controlled. We're not in control of the situation, but we are in control of ourselves. That's the only thing about that we can control. Even sometimes it's easier said than done, but
Right.
it's like, yeah. But no, definitely. I mean, for me, it was more like it was more of a. I had a massive spiritual awakening back in 2012. Um, I'm not religious, but I'm very spiritual. I've had some experiences that I had some shamanic experience. Are you familiar with shamanism?
Maybe a little bit, depends on what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, I worked with plant medicine, and like
Oh,
things
okay.
like ayahuasca, or I've worked with the great mother ayahuasca a few times, a good 2-3 times in my life, and that really yeah, that changed my life. Really, like, kind of shifted my perspective about a lot of stuff. I really started living my life more to the fullest after those experiences. And so, yes, it's kind of this realization that everything is interconnected, and there definitely must be a vast intelligence that sees everything, that knows everything, and that sees us in our good moments and in our bad moments, and that guides us through through the hardships of life. So,
Right.
even people that are not religious, I think that everyone on a deeper level, they all must know that there's something. Do you know what I mean? That there is something more. No way that life is just this.
Right. I
Just
think
like
so.
yeah, there's gotta be something after. 100%, 100%. There must be. Do you know what I mean? There must.
Right. Yeah, I
So
think that was, it is how you react to it. Like for us, it was immediately, it was just like, okay, well, I'm gonna get my baby back. And so it was like going into like, and what was weird about it is you talk, this ties into a lot of things. I think that, I was talking about like fear and even trauma, like that stuff comes out later. Even we were talking
yeah,
about compartmentalizing, you push it over here, it's still
mhm,
gonna come back. Fear's not gone, right?
yeah,
um it was really weird because like 4 months later we went through the whole thing, like we were in get him back mode, right? And when we got him back, we went, unpacked the baby stuff from the garage, and we moved on with life, right? It was
yeah,
it just, there was no time to think about later, right? And what happened was, is it's very interesting about that because a year and a half after this, right, I'm at a baby shower and I have my two, they were my two teen girls with me at the time. And there was an infant that was there that was the same age as my son when he was gone. And I remember I was looking at him, and I mean, this is a good time. Everybody's jovial, and I get up and I go to the bathroom, and I'm in the bathroom, and then I'm like, and then I start crying, and I can't
mm,
stop, and I'm like, what is wrong with me? Like, and I think that we had just go, 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 that my body never fully processed,
you never dealt with it on an
never dealt
emotional
with
and a
getting him
physical
back
level.
and that relief. And like, and again, like I say, like that was something that I've never had, and to this day, like I've never gone through anything as hard as
Mm,
losing him. And like, but yeah, it is how you react and how you grow from that and what you take.
mm.
And ultimately, yeah, that was a big huge thing of understanding there's not much, it's not worth getting upset and bent out of shape over small things when.
It's true. Do you know, sometimes there's things happening in life, and because we need to be strong, we're in a position where we need to be strong maybe for others,
Mhm.
and so we kind of brush things under the carpet, sort of. Do you know what I mean? It's like, right, I'll deal with this later. I can't
Mhm.
deal with it now. And the thing is that like you said, that thing is not gone. It's stored somewhere into the depth of your subconscious mind, and even in your body. It's stored in your body.
Right.
They said that trauma is actually stored inside the body on an energetic level. So, it's like when we speak about emotions, like
Mhm.
emotions are like energy in motions. So when you feel sad, or when you feel angry, or you got some sort of negative emotion, you can actually feel it inside the body. I know when I'm pissed off, sometimes I can feel it in my solar
Right.
plexus. Or sometime when you deal with unspoken things, You know, when you've been shut down, when somebody's not listening to you, you've been, your opportunity to speak up or speak out has been taken away from you, has been suppressed. Then you can feel it in the, you know, the throat chakra. I mean, I don't know if you're into the chakras, but I'm big onto all that stuff, and I know that traumas are stored inside the body, and if you don't deal with them, they stay there forever, and they eventually at some point they come up to the surface. And when they come to the surface, you're like, what the fuck was that? You know,
Where'd that come from? Yeah.
yeah. And so that's why I like working with plant medicine, because it actually, what it does is that it gets those traumas that are unresolved, undealt with. It just take those traumas and bring them to the surface, where now you're like, you got to have a look at them, and you're not running anywhere at that point. You know, it's
Right.
like the traumas it's like they're right in front of you, and it's like, okay, let's deal with this right there and then, because once I dealt with it, it's not going back in my body. It's dealt with. It's like
Right.
transmuted. Are you familiar with the great art of alchemy?
I mean, like there's things I've heard. It doesn't like personally though.
It's esoteric. I mean, I'm big in my esoteric practices and mysticism and things like that. But when you look into the great work of alchemy, is basically the transmutation of mental and emotional state. So it's basically taking a trauma that is an emotion very negatively charged, yeah, and is kind of finding the way to take this ball of energy and transmute it, change it, transform it into positive energy. You know what I mean? By going, okay, what's the trauma? Why am I feeling sad? Why am I feeling angry? I'm obviously triggered by something. Okay, what is my trigger? And then you have a look at that trigger, and you kind of look into it, and you're like, okay, why is this triggering me? And you know, it's kind of, it's almost like self therapy. Yeah, that's what it is. It's
I
self
think it's just
therapy.
being aware also of your own emotions. Like,
Oh yeah.
you know, one of the things I will tell you, like it's been a wild last couple of years for me. And one of the things that I've thought about, you know, and even dealing with my kids and stuff like that is making sure that you allow yourself to feel what you're going to feel instead of having it all just sucked down in. And explaining to, you know, my kids, I remember having a conversation with my, you know, 13-year-old daughter at the time. And I was like, it is okay to be excited about what's going on. And it's also okay at the same time to be mourning for something that's never going to be again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay, as long as you're allowing yourself to feel it. And I think a lot of times people don't allow themselves to feel. They just kind of like suck it down in them. And then that's going to come out, you know. There's this story called Prune to Bloom, and it's by Bunny Wilson. And it's basically like this little, like, you know, story about like being all these vines and how they feel. And it's like, you know, you have the farmer comes in, and the whole point of this thing is you can react to being cut down in two different ways. You can understand that sometimes things are being cut off from your life so that you can grow to be a better person. And it really sucks, you know, like understanding that there's different seasons in life. And at this season, maybe these things are being chopped off and thrown away. And it sucks because maybe you feel really, really raw and cut down and broken and all this stuff. But that's okay, because if you waller in it and you become bitter from it, well, then you're not going to grow back as fast. Okay. But if you recognize it for what it is, and you're grateful, and this is from a Christian standpoint, you know, I'm, you know, viewing like God's cutting these things off so that I'm going to grow into a better person, right? Understanding that, oh gosh, this sucks. And it's okay to feel sad about it. It's okay to be like, oh, that hurts, you know? But the bitterness is where that's the part where it becomes the bigger issue, is like, you're not going to grow back from it. If you recognize, okay, well, here's the plan. I don't have control, but the plan is, you know, I'm grateful for what's happening right now so that this can come better, then you tend to grow and you tend to be a better person if it's continually being focused on on that. And so you're going to grow back. And that's what the point of it is he's talking, you know, all these little vines are like, well, how did you get such great fruit, you know, and all this. And he's like, be ready and be willing. And it's like, sometimes when you're going to be cut down, you need to be willing to be cut down, because if you're going to be like, don't take that, oh my gosh, and you're holding on to it, which we all do, you know, you're holding on to these little things, you're not going to go back as fast.
It's true.
It's a good story.
I like, it's allowing yourself to go through the process. It's like, you know, when you look back and some things, like you said, something that's been taken away from you, and that you were at the time you were like, no, I don't want this to go, you know what I mean? And you feel like your whole world is crashing down around you, because you're like, shit, I wouldn't be, you know, I wouldn't be who I am without this. And then you realize years later down the line, and it's probably the best thing that ever happened to you, because
right. And so it's like, oh gosh, but man, at the time that cut. Ooh. So it's been weird, because I've felt that this year, and I'm just now in a position where I'm seeing what's coming out of that. And it's been weird, because I've like, and don't get me wrong, like, you're gonna hold your pity parties. Like, I feel like people that are just like, you know, don't ever feel this way, and it's like, that's unrealistic, come on. Some days you just need to have a glass of wine and cry, you know, and it's okay. And it's where you stay. And I think that's and it's been neat, because now I'm getting to see, that's why, okay, you know. And I think that's part of it, but that's seasons, you know. You're gonna go through those shitty times, and it's how you approach, you know, how you respond and come back from it. So
there's a friend of mine that says something. I need to remember how she says it. It's Jessica Jones from Amazonia Krav Maga. I've interviewed those two girls not too long ago. They're a friend of mine, and Jessica says, how does she say it? You need to go through a ton of shit before you get to the sugar. And it's true. It's like, you know, it's in order to get to the root, it's like you're digging for the gold, and you got to go through all that dirt and all that. You got to get dirty to get that gold, you know. But that gold is somewhere, like within our soul, within every situation. There is that gold, and the gold is what you take from it, the positive that you take from it, that's going to help you towards, you know, personal achievement and development. And so very often people are not willing to get dirty, to shovel all the dirt, you know, to get to that gold.
So, well, it's funny to me, because I've had, you know, you talk about epiphany things that people have said to you. I remember, like, I'm one of those people that, you know, how I don't know if it's like not things naturally come, but I'm also one of those people where I'm like, if I do something, I feel like I'm pretty okay that if I actually practiced, I could be like average, right? Does that make sense? And I remember, like, when I was rock climbing, and I was getting really frustrated, and I had just started, and one person told me, and I've used this in martial arts too with people, where he said, you're not giving respect to the craft. And it was about, it takes people, you have to learn it. There has to be all of these things. You're not just going to naturally just have it right away. And I've used that all the time. Like, if you think that you're going to be just this awesome person right off the bat, then you're basically insulting everybody that busted the last, you know, 10, 20 years of their life to get to that point. If you think you're going to be, you know, this, and it's like, give respect to what it takes for the fight to get there in the first place, you know? So, you know.
It takes time, trials and errors, sweat, blood, and tears.
Right.
Did you have any experience that you couldn't explain in a rational manner?
All the time.
Have you ever seen any ghosts?
I probably have. Oh gosh, are we really? This is a self-protection thing. We're talking about ghosts.
I mean, I'm quite open-minded about a lot of stuff. Yeah.
I have very different viewpoints on what I view in that. I would say demonic presence. How's that?
I have experienced something like that as well.
I have been in a position, and I think this is where you have that, you know, your gut instinct stuff, you know. I have been in several positions where I'm like, nope, you don't need to be here. And I've met people where they were the last person I wanted to be around. And I had just met them and they were charming and attractive. And it was just like everything in me was like, nope. Ghosts. Yes, but not anything I want on the internet.
All right, cool. Yeah, you don't have to. We can talk about it in private if you want. Like,
but yeah, it's like, well, and I don't even know about that. I say that, I joke about it. I have very differing, as a Christian, very differing, I think, viewpoints on what I think ghosts are. You talk about energies, right?
Mhm.
I think that you're not off.
Now, everything is energy.
Right. And so I think that sometimes there's demonic, in my opinion, also just emotion and memory.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was to view this, goodness, we are getting really weird, aren't we? Okay. This normally requires alcohol. I think that God is the creator of time. We are inside of time. We can't even comprehend what it would be like to be outside of time. Okay. Mm-hmm. And when you deal with emotions and stuff like that, I think like people's idea of ghosts or things that are moving or things like that are maybe strong presence of something prior. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then I think that there's actual spiritual warfare. So,
oh yeah,
I have been in a position where, and my mom, a ghost. Okay. My mom's old house, she had like a 115-year-old farmhouse. It was huge out in the middle of central Kansas. Big thing. And I remember like I was never going to stay in that basement of that house. Like my dad, like, and the house was fine, but there's like, I remember going down the stairs to the basement. I opened the door and there was this cold cloud that I was looking through. And I was like, nope. And I was not staying in that basement ever again. So, and then my dad always told me that whenever he would walk from the shop to the house, he would never look in the upstairs windows because he was like, man, if I ever saw something up there that I knew was weird, we'd have to move.
That's the thing when you live in very old places, like, like 100, 150-year-old, 200-year-old places, and people have been living there. You never know what have happened in there. Right. But I do believe. I've not necessarily had experiences with ghosts, but I believe in energy. I believe in spirits. I believe in light and darkness, and of course there are light beings and there are dark beings, and we as humans, we are like a hybrid between the light and darkness. That's why we got a shadow. Have you looked into Carl Jung's work? No. That's really cool stuff. Like Carl Jung speaks about the dark side of the human psyche, and that we all
call that sin.
What? No. It's like the so it's like we all have those aspects of ourselves that we hate, that we don't want to see. Do you know what I mean? And these are hiding in the depth of our subconscious, like the darkness of our subconscious mind. And so that's why Carl Jung speaks about doing the shadow work. And the shadow work is basically transmuting these aspects of ourselves that we don't like, that we hate, in order to kind of start loving ourselves, because ultimately the goal in life is to love ourselves, love other people, and kind of bring that high vibe, raise the vibrations, because everything is energy, frequency, and vibrations. You familiar with the work of Nikola Tesla a little bit?
Yeah.
So Nikola Tesla, that's what he was saying. If you want to find the secret of the universe, you have to think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibrations, because everything is energy vibrating at a certain frequency. So, it's like metal. What is metal? What is plastic? Or what is wood? Or any of those materials are actually neutrons, protons, electrons. It's like particles, but it's particles vibrating at a certain frequency, at a certain ratio, and it's vibrating so fast that it seems to us that it's physical matter, when in fact it's it's billions of particles vibrating at a certain frequency that create and even us, that's what we are, that's what consciousness is. I mean, that's some deep shit, that, but you know what I mean, it's like it's when you get into the quantum physics and you realize that everything is energy. So if everything is energy, that would make total sense that what we can actually see and perceive with the naked eye is what? 3% of the electromagnetic spectrum. So there's 97% out there of life, of things around us that we cannot perceive. So, it
I
makes
agree.
complete sense that we're not alone, that there's definitely other beings living in different dimensions, like higher frequency and lower frequencies and all that. And I mean, if you work with plant medicine, you definitely experience things like that. So I have definitely 100%.
I have a
So,
lot of
eh?
yeah, I've had friends that have done that, and
Mhm.
they've had some interesting experiences for sure. So
No, it's brilliant. I'll tell you about it like offline. But I tell you what, let's kind of wrap up with two questions that I ask everyone. Okay, so actually three. If you could go back in the past and do something differently, what would it be?
Mm. So it's never anything that would change the trajectory of what I've done, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. Like, I
Yeah.
don't want to change any of that, because if I was to go back, it would mess everything up. But there are two different instances that I can think that are very, very small things where I wish I would have been nicer.
Okay. Yeah.
So if I could change anything, it's the effect of what I might have had on that person. So
Okay.
just being a kinder person in that moment. Those are the things, like, I think deep seated shame stuff, that it's just like, if I
Yeah.
could go back and I could change that, then that's what I would have done. Yeah. And I
Okay.
don't have anything I want to change. It is the way it is.
No, it's good. I actually, that's quite interesting. Out of all the people that I've asked that question, and I asked that question to everyone towards the end of the interview, you're the first person that actually gave me this type of answer. Like, I wish I would have been like nicer to that person or that person. Uh, that's a sign of emotional intelligence. That's a sign of that you got personal awareness, you like inner awareness, where you're looking within and you're like, oh, you're looking at your actions, your words, and you're like, oh, I wish I would have done that better, or maybe I end up hurting that person with what I said, and that's not what I meant. And so I get it, and I also get the fact that you're saying, except that I wouldn't want to change anything because your experience made you who you are, and without even the slight bit of experience that you had, you wouldn't be who you are today.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, even the stuff that were negative, where at the time you'd be like, oh, I could definitely do without that.
All right.
But without that, you wouldn't be who you are today. You wouldn't have the understanding that you have today. You wouldn't have the wisdom that you have today if it wasn't for the negative times. So
Right.
I'm the same. To that question, I wouldn't change anything. I mean,
Right.
I could, same like you, I could possibly go, right, I wish I didn't hurt that person there, or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that. But other than that, anything that happened to me happened for a reason. So yeah, I
Right.
wouldn't change anything.
Yep.
So if you had the power to change the world at will, yeah, if you had superpower, if you were God or goddess, whatever, what would you do? What would you change?
Oh my gosh.
Just call me Julian.
I don't want that power. I don't want that. I know that innately I am it's kind of like, okay, if I bring this back into a very small way of looking, it's like, have you ever seen that meme where it's like, dear God, all I ask is that you allow me the chance to see that winning the lottery won't make me a bad person. Right.
Yeah.
I don't want that kind of power. I don't know, maybe if I could change the world for anything, if I could change anything in the world,
Hmm.
Oof, I don't know. I need to dwell on that one.
Yeah. Okay. No probs. No probs.
I don't want to be that. I don't want that power. I don't want that knowledge.
Yeah. All right. All right. So,
Ignorance
like,
is bliss.
I don't know. Would you not get rid of the ego of the negativity? Get rid of rapists. Get rid of whatever.
I mean, I think everybody could say they want that to happen and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I want that, but you're goodness, just to even. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, I don't want people hurt or things like that. So
Mm.
I don't. Yeah. If I can
Oh,
fix anything, yeah, there you go. Remove evil. There. My
remove
own
evil.
sin nature. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
Really like to not do that, but
Okay. All right, then let's go to the last question. If what advice would you give to younger generations? So if you had a class full of 10-year-old children in front of you, what would be your advice to them?
we're talking from a self-defense standpoint.
From any point that you choose.
From a self-defense standpoint, if I have a class of 10-year-olds in front of me, then the biggest piece of advice that I'm going to give them at that point is, because I want them safer, is to be able to verbalize that a situation makes them uncomfortable, and to be able to say it loud. That is the number one thing that I can give any 10-year-old straight up, is to be able, and I want them to say it loud, and I want them to say it, I'm uncomfortable, I don't like what you're doing.
So boundary setting
on a grand scale. That's what I want for a kid.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. That's good. And so if it was just like that, advice about life?
Advice about life, I don't know. Listen to your mom.
Okay. Listen to your mom. She's always right.
In your room. Pick up after yourself and don't half-ass your job. You know what? There you go. That's it. If I could offer any advice whatsoever, is don't half-ass anything. There you go.
Don't
half-ass something. If you're going to do a job, do it right.
Something do it fully.
There you go. Do it fully. Do it right. Do everything to your best ability. There you go.
Okay. So, is there anything that you want to plug in? Have you got a website? Have you got any courses coming on? Are you selling anything? Just put it on there.
It's all just going to be coming out. I've got some funny merchandise that's on. If you go to my Instagram, there's like a link tree there, and there's just a bunch of stuff. You can find everything through that. And that's ultimately where, if Marlene doesn't completely hate me and I get all my videos done, then that's ideally where that will all be as well. So yeah, and then I'll be at the Combative Summit, so that'll be fun. That's the next big thing that's coming up. That's the end of September. So yeah.
Nice.
Hopefully I don't die there.
No, you shouldn't. Don't start thinking like that.
Get my ass handed to me. Don't worry, I'll video it, put it online. Some funny music.
All right. Well, tell you what, Christun, just stay there. I'll have a little chat with you, but we're gonna say bye to our viewers. We hope that everyone enjoyed the chat today. And if you want to see this podcast again, you want to see this live, just go onto the live section of my YouTube channel, which is Adrenaline Combatives, and just share it widely, spread the love. And see you soon, guys.